Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to another 3 hours of random places in Fallout 3. In this video, we'll be visiting a variety of places across Fallout 3, exploring them, finding out about the lore, any secrets, some good loot, killing some baddies, and just generally having a lot of fun. Exploring the locations in Fallout 3 is a really amazing experience, and honestly, Fallout 3 is a masterpiece when it comes to exploration. This video is intended for people who want to listen to something when they sleep or doing some work. Perhaps you're doing some settlement building in Fallout 4 and you want something to listen to, or perhaps you just want to learn some interesting things about Fallout 3. Either way, sit back, relax, pop open a cold one, and enjoy. Eventually you'll notice an exit, and if we take that exit, we will find that we are now at Falls Church, and here it is on the mini-map. However, I didn't really want to investigate this area yet, maybe saving it for yet another video. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be looking at Falls Church, which was recommended to me by H.K. Henry. Now, this was recommended to me a long time ago when I first started this series. I want to apologize, I do have a big backlog of locations within the Capital Wasteland. So please be patient, and I promise you I will get to these locations. And as you saw at the beginning of this video, I previously visited Falls Church in another video, my video on Grey Ditch. However, briefly visiting this location is a mistake, as it will kind of glitch or break one of the quests associated with Falls Church, and we shall get into that later. For now, let's talk a bit about Falls Church. So Falls Church was a city located in Virginia, of course before the nuclear apocalypse, and as H.K. Henry pointed out, many players might not visit here because it's a bit difficult to access, as it is only accessible through the metro tunnels. Now, the most common way to travel here is through Marigold Station, which is how I came here, which is via Grey Ditch. However, it can also be accessed from the Mason District, via the Mason District Metro, or from Arlington Cemetery at the Arlington Metro. So there are 3 ways into the city, but the easiest and most common way seems to be through Grey Ditch. However, even that route is a little bit long. All of the roads and stuff are blocked off with rubble, making it inaccessible from any other means. And as you can see here on the world map, here is the location of Falls Church along with Marigold Station. Marigold Station is just south of Grey Ditch. So when I fast traveled here, the super mutants here were engaged in some kind of fight with what I believe were raiders. However, I'm not entirely for sure. But anyways, I took out the super mutants using the laser rifle, which is one of the weapons I've fallen in love with the most. Deals a lot of damage, it's pretty good. So there's going to be a lot of super mutants in this area, so make sure you are prepared for that. Over here we can find a dead raider, which I featured actually in the Grey Ditch video, so she had no loot on her this time since I looted her in the past. Coming out from the station, you're kind of in a plaza-like area, and if we go down here on the road, we can see the rubble that prevents us from using the road in order to access Falls Church. Now, real quick, some information about the real-life Falls Church. As with many locations in Fallout 3, Falls Church is a real city in real life located in Virginia, kind of a suburb of the Washington, D.C. area. So, some quick history about Falls Church. It is believed that the area was settled around 1699, and before that, the area belonged to the Iroquois Confederacy. During the American Civil War, Falls Church voted 44-26 in favor of secession, and it became a point of contention between the Union and the Confederacy. The Union managed to occupy much of the village throughout the war, but could never occupy the entire village. The reason the site was important was because it offered good views of Washington, D.C. Obviously, by the time of Fallout 3, Falls Church has become a very developed and urbanized area. So with that out of the way, if we head over to the northern part of Falls Church, we can find a roundabout with a really creepy and odd centerpiece at the middle. There was a super mutant brute here who made a little small encampment, and if we look over at the building on the left, we can see it says a Cup of Joe. And this is actually a coffee sign that we can find in Fallout New Vegas and Michelangelo's workshop. But after that, she no longer wanted to talk to me. Over here, we can find a very large coffee sign that says like a cup of joe or something like that. And upon further research, I found out that a cup of joe is kind of like the Fallout world's equivalent to Starbucks, a large coffee chain across the United States. So pretty cool and something I never realized before. At the Super Mutants' little encampment here, we can find a first aid box that is hovering off the ground. So clearly that Super Mutant was a student at Hogwarts. And the back of this truck has absolutely nothing in it, which is a bit sad. Then we can go above the station on this little roof area, and you can get some really good views of the station below, and I found a box with a stim pack and Rad-X in it. So not bad at all. Also, you can get some really good views of the surrounding Falls Church. And then to the south, we can find a bridge over the roadway that leads us to an office building with several super mutants outside of it. So we definitely want to kill the super mutants, and I also want to talk a lot about this office building. When you first visit Falls Church, you definitely want to visit this building right away, especially if you're trying to be friendly or helpful to the Brotherhood of Steel. So during a training exercise in Falls Church, several Brotherhood of Steel members became stranded after a super mutant attacked, and they're held up in the office building. When you enter the office building, they'll be fighting the super mutants, and this can start the unmarked quest, The Lost Initiate, where you have to aid the Brotherhood of Steel members in escaping from Falls Church, obviously fighting off the super mutants. However, if you come to Falls Church and then leave right away like I did, the super mutants will kill the Brotherhood of Steel members, and then the quest is not completable. So, if you ever visit Falls Church, make sure you visit this building right away so you can complete this quest, unlike me. However, that will not stop us from entering the building and of course trying to get some loot out of this place. And inside there are several super mutants which we will need to kill. The layout of the office building is pretty simple. The layout of this office building is pretty straightforward. As we go in, there will be some bathrooms, and if you go in, be careful because there is a trap. I got very lucky and it missed me, and I just took the Rad-Away and stim packs from the first aid box. There are several super mutants located within the facility, and there's no Brotherhood of Steel because, well, they are all dead. So take out the super mutants if you're like me, and in this next room where I first encountered the super mutants, to the right of the bathroom, we can find a copy of Tumblers Today, which will increase your lockpick skill, a very good find if I do say so myself. In this next room where we can find several skeletons laying about, and in the very back, we can find a very hard locked door. And this door is probably where Initiate Peck is dead. Apparently, if you take too long to locate Peck, he can become locked in this room, which is a very hard lock, and he will be dead, and all of his loot will be stripped clean. So, rather unfortunate, but at least it's only an unmarked quest, and I'm not going to lose sleep over it. But I would have liked to have shown it in a video, of course, but at least I can tell you about it. If we head to the eastern part of Falls Church, we can find a playground outside of a school. Now, the building on our right is also part of the office building, and inside of this building, we can find several dead Brotherhood of Steel, alongside several dead super mutants. Also, there's another trap in another bathroom. Don't know why super mutants like putting traps in bathrooms, but, apparently they do. And there's also some beds in here, which were really good for me. But if you're looking to get some power armor or some things to repair your power armor, this would be a good place to do it, as we have several dead Brotherhood of Steel initiates. Also, the skeleton was very angry that I looted that member of the Brotherhood of Steel. Also, there is a terminal down here, and we can find an entry from the time of the pre-war, which reads, "I don't know what's happening. The sirens went off 20 minutes ago, and I hear something like thunder in the distance. We're not allowed to leave the building, and I can't see what's happening in the street. I'm scared. I think this might be it. Everything that we've been building up for, this might be the last thing I ever write. So, to whoever finds it, if I don't make it, tell my family that I love them." And this is just a good example that riddled throughout Fallout 3, we can find all kinds of primary sources from the times the bombs fell during the Great War, which I think is really cool. Then moving over to the schoolhouse, or the school building, high school or something maybe, we can find a largely destroyed building with several rooms that used to be classrooms. This building would have been very tall, and it was definitely in an urban area, so like an urban school. And like every other location in this area, there's going to be a lot of super mutants, so make sure to kill them and to take all of their amazing loot. Across the street, we can find the Falls Church North Metro, along with a Vault Tech poster on the school. Clearly, Vault Tech had an incredible marketing team, marketing to school students, which is interesting. And then we can kind of walk around and see the remnants of this school. But again, this place has been completely destroyed. Who knows if a bomb fell on top or what happened. Then across the street, we can find LOB Enterprises. And I honestly could have made an entire video about this building alone, but I decided to go ahead and throw it in with Falls Church since it is located within Falls Church. And LOB Enterprises, or perhaps LOB Enterprises, was working for the Chinese government and was part of the Chinese war effort. Not a whole lot is actually known about the company, but they were in weapons development, and their main development was, sorry for pronunciation, the Zhu Rong V418 Chinese pistol, which is a standard 10mm Chinese pistol modified to shoot incendiary rounds, which is quite cool. However, they were discovered by the US government hours before the Great War started, and government agents took over the building. Today, the assault robots are the only ones left within the building, obviously, and are the ones that are still guarding and pose a big danger to anyone who enters. So this building has a lot of really cool lore and a lot to add to the Fallout universe, so let's check it out. Now, as I entered LOB Enterprises, I immediately noticed that the radio was blaring for some reason. I could hear Three Dog's voice. If you haven't realized, I always play Fallout with the radio on mute because of copyright purposes. So upon entering, I quickly looked at this terminal, which we could find the evidence that the feds had showed up and were about to invade the building. And then I immediately went to go find the radio and to turn it off. I do not know why that radio was playing, but it was. And there was also a robo-brain in my way, so I was in a race against time itself to turn off this radio, which was playing for whatever reason. But as I said earlier, that terminal has some interesting information on it about the company and about the invasion by the US federal agents. To the left of the front desk, we can find 2 bathrooms, men and women, and some stim packs and other medical supplies within the first aid boxes. Then there is a second floor above the reception desk where we can find yet another robo-brain, and upon killing it, we can look at this floor. However, there is no real loot up here, which is unfortunate, besides a bunch of junk, which might be useful in another game like Fallout 4, but for me, not so useful. There are several employee terminals scattered around this place. However, they kind of contain the same information. And then if we head right of the reception desk, we can find the majority of the building along with 2 other sections to the building. And throughout the building, we can find several different types of robots. Protectrons and robo-brains are the most common. However, there are also a lot of Mr. Gusties, and at higher levels, we can find several sentry bots, but since I'm at the lower end of a level, I only found 1 sentry bot. And if you have broken steel, there will be several sentry bots within this facility, so it could become quite difficult. On the second floor, we can find some loot and grenades. And then in the employee room, we can find several dead employees. And a lot of employees will have weapons and ammunition next to them because of the federal raid that was taking place. These were Chinese agents, and they'll have some loot or weapons next to them. In the very back easternmost room, we can find a copy of Pugilism Illustrated, which will increase our unarmed. So a really good find, and then if we head to the northern part of the building, we can find a very large office room with several enemies inside. This room also contains a Nuka-Cola Quantum, which you could see as I entered the room. There was a Mr. Gusty in the stairwell, and then I was kind of crouching to try and avoid being sighted by any more robots. Later, a Protectron did see me, so I ended up killing him, and at this rate, it was just better to kill all of the robots within the facility. However, there isn't a lot on this floor for the rest of it besides just more robots to kill. Past this, there are 2 more sections to the building, the archives and then the east wing. So first I decided to go check out the archives since they are underground. Now there's 2 entrances to the archives, and one of the entrances has a lot of gas being leaked out of somewhere. So I shot in order to make sure I got rid of it, and then I could go down safely. However, it doesn't matter. As you enter the archives, there will be even more gas, which will make the ensuing battle a bit difficult. So in this room, there was immediately a robo-brain, and you could see the gas in the room, and then the robo-brain shot, and it all just went up in flames. Luckily, I survived, and I was able to kill the robo-brain. However, a Mr. Gusty later came up and said, "Nuh-uh," and then he killed me pretty easily. So after this, I had to change my strategy. What I tried to do is I tried to set off the gas, but the gas is even next to the entrance, so there's no choice but to have it hurt me. After this, I chucked grenades down the stairwell in order to try to kill the Mr. Gusty. The pulse grenade did a lot of damage, and then I was able to use my hunting rifle to finish him off. Now, I found out Mr. Gusties are actually pretty freaking difficult, and I don't really ever remember encountering this enemy within Fallout New Vegas. Or at the very least, they're not nearly as common as they are in Fallout 3. And as we head further down into the archives, of course, we will find more robots to fight and to kill. And if we head to the easternmost part of the archives, we can find a Chinese Special Ops training manual, which is obviously really good. But first, we have to kill this robo-brain who was very angry at me. Now, I wanted to mention, according to the terminals, there is a secret exit within the archives to the metro tunnels. However, this secret exit is not present within the game, or at least we cannot find it. And here is the Chinese Army Special Ops Training Manual. So, obviously, there is some kind of secret exit down here. However, it is not accessible to the player. It does make me wonder where it is, though. And then in these cabinets, we can find some weapons and ammo. And my recommendation for this place is to loot everywhere, especially like cabinets and stuff, because you never know when you're going to find some weapons or some ammo. There's also a safe down here with some bottle caps in it, so that's pretty good. And if we head to the very back of the archives, we can find a stealth boy. There are several stealth boys located within this facility. Obviously, it was a Chinese company, secretly, so we can find some Chinese goods within it. After this, we pretty much cleared the archive, so I headed back to the main floor and then headed up to the east wing, where we can find the terminal and a teddy bear sitting on a chair, which is badass, along with a stealth boy. Now, this terminal is the terminal that contains information on the secret exit in the event the US government discovered the true intent of this company. However, as I said, no such tunnel or secret exit can be found. Eventually, you'll enter a very large office room that has collapsed, and there's a Mr. Gusty in here. The Mr. Gusty is on the 2nd floor, however, he can come down to the 1st floor, and I didn't really realize that. I thought he might just be stuck up here, and it almost got me killed, because when he hid behind the wall, I decided to go ahead and just push further into the east wing. This was a mistake, as I encountered another Mr. Gusty as I was looting, and then I was being attacked by the Mr. Gusty from earlier, so I was just being attacked from all angles by Mr. Gusties. No fun, I almost died. I just used my Pip-Boy in order to pause the game and take a deep breath, and pulled out my Chinese assault rifle and the limited 5.56 ammo I had in order to kill both Mr. Gusties. So this part took up a lot of my precious ammo in order to clear it. And this part is definitely the most difficult part within all of Falls Church. The robots here are pretty high level and they have a lot of health. So definitely come prepared, and if you're a higher level, you'll even have harder robots to fight. However, I did find that the robo-brains became easier and easier to kill. Eventually, I just used a 44 Magnum, and by shooting its head, it was quite easy to kill. However, there I miraculously missed the robo-brain twice by shooting in between its head and its body. And then after that, we can head upstairs, and up here we can find a room on the left, and this is the research and development room with a very hard lock terminal. Besides that, on the desk, we can find 2 pre-war books. However, there's not much else loot in here. Again, another cabinet with ammunition inside. And there's the 2 pre-war books. And then heading back out through the hallway, we can find the CEO's office. And initially, it might seem like this office is impossible to get into. It has a very hard lock. So unless you have a 100 lockpick, you can't get in. Or you can just go around like I did and easily access the room. Now, there is a sentry bot in here, which for me was pretty damn intimidating, so I decided to go ahead and use a mini nuke because there is a mini nuke in the room, so I figured, hey, I'll just get it right back anyway, and, you know, all is fair in love and war. Now, once I killed the robots, I came in, and I looted them, of course, and thankfully there is a key within the CEO's desk. This key can be used to unlock the door and to open the briefcase, and the briefcase includes a Zhurong V418 Chinese pistol, which, as we mentioned before, it has incendiary abilities, which is really amazing. So, a really incredible find, and then we can also see the CEO's terminal, which will include a lot of great information on the true purposes of the company. As I mentioned before, the company was discovered by the US government just hours before the atomic bombs fell across the world. Also, we can find some loot, and there's also a copy of Tumblers Today within here. However, I couldn't find it. Normally, it's next to the computer, but the mini nuke blew it away, and I was looking for a long time, and finally found it on the filing cabinets, and I was able to take it. Normally, it's next to the computer, but for me, it went flying. And in the bathroom, we can also find a mini nuke, which I believe is supposed to be on the shelf, but again, the resulting explosion from the mini nuke probably kind of shifted it off of the shelf. And something funny I wanted to point out is the gentlemen or men's and ladies' restrooms are switched. The ladies' room has the urinals, and the men's room has no urinals. So clearly some kind of oversight by the developers, and just something I think is quite funny, but, you know, yeah, obviously not a big deal, but kind of funny. Alright guys, and there you have it. Falls Church, a location that is very easy to miss within Fallout 3, but there is truly a lot of amazing content in this area, and I had an incredible time exploring this area and learning more about LOB Enterprises. Falls Church was far larger than I thought it was going to be, so this video was a lot longer than I had initially thought. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be looking at Scrapyard. Scrapyard is just south of Minefield and a bit to the east. This is a very famous location within Fallout 3, as this is where we can find our lovely dog companion, Dog Meat. So I wanted to investigate Scrapyard a bit, look into dog meat, look into the location and some of its history, and also look at a bit at the surrounding area, as there is a very interesting unmarked location nearby. So as with many locations in the Fallout universe, the Scrapyard is based on a real-world scrapyard called the Montgomery Scrap Corporation Scrapyard in Rockville, Maryland. So pretty cool. And with that, let's check it out. And then here on the world map, you can see the location of Scrapyard. Like I said, it is just south of Minefield and northeast of Vault 101. And Scrapyard is actually pretty big, and as you might imagine, it features a maze of different scrap and debris collected during the pre-war era. A lot of it remains untouched. Here we can see the entrance to Scrapyard along with a shack, and we will discuss that shack a bit later in the video. But besides that, there's a lot of cars and some old train and railroad cars. And if you head to the northeastern part of Scrapyard, you will hear gunshots, and when you come to the other side of this train, you will find raiders attacking a dog. You want to definitely aid the dog because this is Dog Meat, our furry companion that will join us for the rest of our adventures. He is a very good boy and a very famous dog within the Fallout and video game world. After a short dialogue, you can ask Dog Meat to join you, and he will agree. So because of Dogmeat's fame, I wanted to jump into his character a bit. Now, in Fallout 3, you will notice that Dogmeat has heterochromia, meaning he has different colored eyes. However, other Dogmeats, like Dogmeat in Fallout 4, does not have this condition. But, like I just said, Dogmeat is featured in several Fallout games. He was originally introduced in the original Fallout. And in that game, Dogmeat can be found in Junktown, terrorizing Phil, an old man in Junktown, and the Vault Dweller can recruit him as his companion. And Dogmeat is actually inspired by the unnamed dog of Max in Mad Max 2. And of course, a lot of Fallout took inspiration from Mad Max. And in Fallout 2, Dogmeat can actually be encountered in an Easter egg, in which Dogmeat can be picked up by the player character if the player is wearing a Vault 13 jumpsuit. However, if the player chooses to kill Dogmeat, a man named Mel, in reference to Mel Gibson, will appear and attack you trying to avenge the dog. And as I said earlier, Dogmeat makes an appearance in Fallout 4 and is a central piece for one of the trailers of Fallout 4. So one of the most iconic characters, if not the most iconic character in Fallout, and a very good boy. And then over on the northwestern part of Scrapyard, we can find John's treasure box. My name is John, so you're very welcome, everyone. And this ammunition box actually has some pretty amazing loot in it. However, it is a hard lock, so you're going to need 75 lockpick to get it open. But inside we can find 3 skill magazines, Rognak the Barbarian, US Army 30 handy flamethrower recipes, and guns and bullets. Sorry, I tried to say that really fast. Now, also worth mentioning is John's key can actually be acquired through a random encounter, although obviously it might just be easier to have the lockpick like I do. Anyways, after that we can find this shack, and this shack is actually something I had no knowledge about before because I didn't take the correct perks in order to get inside. If you're doing a more evil playthrough of Fallout 3, you might want to take the Contract Killer perk. This will unlock the location here, which is called Littlehorn and Associates, which is ran by Daniel Littlehorn and his secretary. Basically, this company will give you bounties for the ears of good karma NPCs, and you can get a lot of caps. If you have very evil karma, you will even get a bonus upon turning in any ears. But all in all, a pretty cool location that I did not know existed, so I'm glad to have learned about it. Now, one last thing I wanted to explore in Scrapyard was this giant crane in the middle of Scrapyard. You'll notice that the base of the crane rests on a large cement foundation. However, climbing up the cement foundation was not possible, so I thought it might be possible to get on top of this train and then get on top of the crane in order to access the cement foundation. What ensued, though, was a very long process, but it did eventually work through pure determination. Here, I was just trying to get on top of the train through normal means, jumping and stuff, but it was unsuccessful. And I tried for quite a long time, about a minute or so, just trying to jump up, but to no avail. And as I said, there was no way up around the cement foundation, so when I came to the other side of the train to see what was there, I noticed this, a barrel. And using the power of this barrel, I was determined to climb up on top. Eventually, I got the barrel into a good position, or what I thought was a good position, and we got really freaking close. Now, at this part, I almost lost hope because it seemed like there was an invisible barrier, but I thought, what if we had 2 barrels? Perhaps then we could skip up above this invisible barrier on top of the train. So with that, I grabbed another barrel and placed it on top of this old shelf, and the other barrel wedged it so it wouldn't move. These barrels move so freaking easily if you jump on them. But this barrel was stuck, and then I was able to get up on top of the train. Now the only problem was how to get on top of the crane itself. At first I tried jumping. However, this did not work. So then I tried to bring up the barrels and to create a kind of stepping ladder, but this also failed because these barrels are so fragile, and without anything to wedge them on like a bookcase and tires, it failed. I was about to give up hope when I've actually tried from the other side, and lo and behold, We made it. We got on top of the crane, and I was able to walk to the cement structure and look at the crane up close. Kind of a really dumb and pointless thing to do, as there's literally nothing up here, but something I thought was kind of fun. And hey, this is supposed to be like Unexplored Capital Wasteland, so I figured many players probably don't go up here. Also, while doing research on this, I found on the wiki it says the Sky Crane platform isn't accessible except with console commands. Obviously, this isn't true though. I did it on Xbox. Let this be a reminder that if there is a will, there is a way. I do wonder how employees got up here during the pre-war era, if they had to do some kind of like parkour like I did, or, perhaps they just used a ladder, but, who knows. Also, you can get some really amazing views from up here, especially of Minefield, the water tower, and the power station off in the distance. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Minefield Power Station. This is an unmarked location within Fallout 3, and I failed to mention it in my Minefield video, so I thought I would go ahead and mention it here, since it's right in between Minefield and Scrapyard. Over here by these power lines, we can find a skeleton, a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum, and a BB gun. This BB gun is actually pretty useful for this location, because if we look at the railing above the power station, we can actually find some Nuka-Cola bottles on top. Obviously, whoever this skeleton was using these bottles as target practice with his BB gun. I shot one of the bottles with a sniper rifle, which was a big mistake because it sent it flying and I couldn't find it later. Then I was trying to shoot this Nuka-Cola Quantum and I shot the bottle next to it somehow. But eventually I did knock down the Nuka-Cola Quantum on top. So at this location you can find 2 Nuka-Cola Quantum, which is a really good find. And there's also various Nuka-Colas on top as well. As you saw earlier, I sent one flying with the sniper rifle. There's also a skeleton trapped in the railing. I have no clue how he got up there or why or how he died there. But, just kind of a funny little thing within Fallout 3. A very kind of Fallout-esque body. Alright, and there you guys have Scrapyard. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be looking at VAPL 84 Power Station. This is a location just north of Tenpenny Tower, and as you can see here, we have a pretty good view of Tenpenny Tower in the background. So this is a kind of small or unremarkable location, but there is a mini nuke here and a crazy Yaoguai, so let's check it out. So here on the Pip-Boy, you can see the location of VAPL 84 Power Station just south of Evergreen Mills and north of Tenpenny Tower. When you come here, there will be a Yaoguai, and for some reason his movement was really crazy and he had no health. I don't know why that is, but obviously it seems like he got in a fight with another NPC. There's also a glitch here where he can become a ghost Yaoguai, making him extremely dangerous because the player cannot hurt him. In the back of this truck, we can find some metal boxes, ammunition boxes, and a mini nuke. So, really good. I accidentally broke the lock on this ammunition box. I didn't mean to do that, so big mistake. Just normal ammunition and sometimes a stealth boy in those boxes. And within the power station, there isn't anything inside of it, and that's pretty much it for this location. If we head to the west, we can find a spawn location for a random encounter. However, nothing spawned for me, unfortunately. And then if we head to the north of the power station, we can find a collapsed highway, and we can actually get on top of the highway for some pretty good views. Some enemy was trying to attack me here, and I assume it was a rad scorpion, and I'm pretty sure dog meat killed the rad scorpion for me, so thank you very much, dog meat. But there isn't much up here besides some good views and a good position to fight enemies from. And down below, if we go further north, we can find what appears to be some kind of small abandoned shack and a small outhouse across the way. Don't know who lived here or why it's here, but I just thought it was pretty cool and something that is easily glossed over by many players. I certainly had no clue any of this was here, but it just adds a lot to the game and makes it feel more lived in. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please leave them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Calverton, which is an unmarked location within Fallout 3, and I'm actually really happy that I found this location because it was really fun to explore and research. In my previous video, VAPL 84 Power Station, I saw a church on the horizon, and I went to go check it out, and I found several destroyed buildings and small shacks just beneath the hill which the church sits upon. And upon further research, I discovered this is the unmarked town of Calverton, which, like many locations in Fallout, is based on a real-world location. Obviously, here we're talking about a town, so it's based on the real-world Calverton, Virginia, which is a very small town in Virginia, only about 250 people, but pretty cool, and they paid a lot of attention to their source material. Also notably that Calverton was one of the locations that were moved after the size of the Capital Wasteland was expanded in mid-development. The old position of Calverton was in an area east of Jury Street Metro Station, however now it is in an area west of Jury Street Metro Station. So let's check out Calverton. And here we can see Calverton on the map, unmarked, north of the VAPL 84 Power Station and southwest of the Jury Street Metro Station. And as you can see here, this is me approaching Calverton from the church that I saw at the VAPL 84 Power Station. As far as enemies, Calverton has a bit of randomness to it. The Talon Company can spawn here in the southeasternmost house. Also, there are possibilities for creatures to spawn here along the southwest road, as we see here with this Yaoguai. And I also found this dead Robo-Brain, suggesting that the Yaoguai perhaps murdered it. Then up in the houses, we can actually find some really good loot. So in this first house, we can find a copy of Nikola Tesla and you. But besides that, the houses don't really offer a whole lot, just ruins, obviously, from the destruction of nuclear warfare. So judging by the skeletons of these houses, this probably used to be a residential area. Then on the other side of these houses, we can find a truck. And it appears someone was living inside of this truck, but it has since been abandoned. There is a bed along with a lot of footlockers and ammunition crates in it, along with some darts, and of course a skill book, U.S. Army 30 handy flamethrower recipes. But besides that, there wasn't a whole lot in here besides some beer, so hey, that's always a good time. And then we have this billboard. I'm not sure what's on the billboard or underneath it, but there is an Enclave poster plastered over it. Then as we move further down, we can find a bunch of empty shacks. And I would assume these shacks were built in the post-war era, but they've since been abandoned. There's also a large pool of water that is highly irradiated. So perhaps something very bad happened here to the former residents, or perhaps they were just ghouls. It's hard to say as there's no evidence. But there is what appears to be a Brahmin skull in the middle of the pools of water, so I thought that was pretty cool. And then an Enclave helicopter flew over, Vertibird, as it should be properly called, dropping off a Robo-Brain and 2 Enclave soldiers. Now, I got really lucky here because the Enclave soldiers actually got attacked by a Rad Scorpion, and a lot of Rad Scorpions came to assist me in the fight, so I am very thankful to the Rad Scorpions. However, of course, we had to kill them, and I could not compensate them for their help. But hey, that's just how it rolls in the Capital Wasteland sometimes. And I do have to say, the Scoped 44 Magnum is an absolute menace and has been probably my favorite weapon so far in Fallout 3. Then, after killing the last of the Rad Scorpions, me and Dogmeat decided to head up towards the church. Now, on our way towards the church, we discovered what appears to be like a small canyon in the ground, or more like a small ditch, not really a canyon. But anyways, in this ditch, there's actually chances for random encounter, specifically B scenarios. So pay attention to that if you visit here. Also, there were some mole rats nearby, but yeah, they're pretty easy to kill. As we can see here, this is the ditch that I just mentioned. But for me, I didn't see anything of interest in there. And then we made our way over to the church, and a really wild thing happened here. I had a Wastelander on fire running out from behind the church, being chased by a raider with a flamethrower. So a really kind of wild and scene that I was not expecting. And then using my 10mm pistol, I gave the raider a taste of his own medicine. And then thanks to Dogmeat, he died. And then looting his dead body, we could take his flamer fuel, which is something that you can never not have enough of. Then as we enter the church, you're going to want to be very careful because there are several booby traps inside. At the entrance, we have a tripwire, and then on our right, there is a bench with all kinds of great loot and stuff on it, such as a mini nuke, some chems, and there's also ammunition scattered around the floor of this church. As you can see over here, there's some 10mm rounds, along with some 5.56 rounds. So really good, along with a lot of beds for you to rest up in. And there's also some bottle caps on this pedestal, and then a copy of Lying Congressional Style. Also a skull for good measure. Now you want to be careful when you visit here because after killing the flamethrower raider, you will be eventually attacked by additional raiders, probably coming back to what I assume is their base of operations. Also watch out for 2 more booby traps, and then by the toilet is a copy of Pugilism Illustrated. So a lot of skill books in this area, which are always highly welcomed in Fallout. And eventually I saw the red dots on my minimap, and the raiders were here to attack. But Dogmeat made quick work of them, and I found out Dogmeat is much better at fighting than I am. So I'm very thankful to have him at my side. And there you guys have Calverton. I really enjoyed exploring this location. I really like unmarked locations within Fallout. They just feel a lot more untouched by the rest of the wasteland, and it feels like I'm doing some adventuring or exploring on my own. Also, this church from afar just looks really cool, and then we have the really cool looking graveyard next to it. Just a very scenic area within Fallout 3. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please drop them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be looking at Evergreen Mills, or perhaps Evergreen Mill. Interestingly, 3Dog and the Pip-Boy refer to it as Evergreen Mills, however the official sign on the building just says Evergreen Mill. Which is it? I don't know. Now this is an interesting location because there are a lot of raiders here. It's a hotbed for raider activity. However, there is a merchant inside of the facility, which will actually trade with the lone wanderer named Smiling Jack. And also there's a super mutant behemoth locked in a cage just outside of the main building. So let's go ahead and check out Evergreen Mills. And as you can see here on the map, Evergreen Mills is just west of Drury Street Metro Station and north of Tenpenny Tower. And off in the distance, we can see a lot of ruins and old buildings, which I'm sure we'll explore in later episodes. But I figured since this railroad here is already kind of part of Evergreen Mills, we would go ahead and check it out. At the entrance, I found Crow, who is a merchant that travels around Fallout 3. He can be found in several locations, and the reason he's kind of interesting is he is a spiritual merchant who used to be a tribal shaman. So he has some very interesting dialogue and interesting wares. All he sells, though, are a few stim packs and, of course, apparel items. And he can also repair your weapons and armor for you. But besides that, not a whole lot here, but some decent stuff in his inventory. And then at the north end of these railroad tracks, we can find like train tunnels and some super mutants. I was accidentally not wearing my armor here, I noticed when I was using VATS. And the main reason I wasn't using the armor was so I could travel faster, but then I equipped my power armor so the super mutants wouldn't kill me as easily. In this area, there's several dead skeletons, obviously dead. I hope they're dead. And there's also a teddy bear in the shopping cart. I don't know why it's here. I tried to lift it, and then the teddy bear started freaking out, so kind of humorous. But besides that, there's not a whole lot in this area. Heading towards the mill, I decided to come at it from the higher ground. The entrance is this sort of canyon and goes into the valley, obviously some kind of mine. There's a lot of raiders at the entrance here in the canyon, so you're going to want to take them out. I used a 44 Magnum and a sniper rifle, and it was pretty easy. And as you approach, there's several of these guard posts, and you can get some health and ammunition from these boxes. So definitely take a look, because there's some pretty decent loot within this area. Lots of ammunition and lots of healing. Then as we approach Evergreen Mill, we can find a lot more raiders. As Three Dog says, this is a hotbed for raiders, so definitely be prepared for a long fight. But not necessarily a difficult fight. I had a few close encounters, but overall this was actually a pretty easy place to attack, given how many enemies are here. I was fighting this raider from far away. I do not like how the scope works on the hunting rifle in Fallout 3, but I was still able to kill the raider just based on where Vats told me he was. Like I said, there's a caged super mutant behemoth here. However, he is a pain to kill, and using the hunting rifle was not going to be an option. Up on this ridge on the western side, we can find a small shack that's just called Guard Post. And inside there really wasn't a whole lot, but there is a bed where we can sleep and some ammunition. Back outside, I kept fighting the raiders. I'm not sure what happened here, but there was some kind of explosion next to me, and I don't know if it was dog meat trying to kill me or what, but thought that was interesting. I killed the raider and decided to use one of my mini nukes on the super mutant behemoth in order to bring his health down. But even a mini nuke was still not very much damage to him, so then I just used grenades and a mixture of weapons in order to finally kill him. Since he's locked in this cage, he's actually really easy to kill. Now, of course, you could accidentally free him from the cage if you destroy the generator which is powering the electric fence. Upon destroying it, we can enter the cage safely now that he's dead. But if you destroy that before killing him, obviously he can get free and he can wreak havoc on this area. It might be a good strategy to get rid of the raiders. However, then you have to deal with the super mutant yourself. Then on the northern part of Evergreen Mills, kind of behind the facility, we can find the northern shack. For whatever reason, the radio was going off in here, so that is why I kind of cut to a later point after I turned off the radio so I don't get any copyright strikes. But it doesn't really matter, there's just two raiders in here, one of which is a woman dressed in lingerie, so we can assume that these two were getting it on when we interrupted them. Very rude of us. Inside, we can find a lot of ammunition, chems, and, of course, healing items. Also, we can use the bed to get our health up. Down below, we can find a workbench with a bottle cap mine on it, so some decent loot, but besides that, there's nothing of interest inside. And then opposite of that guard post from earlier, we can find the southern shack up on this ridge, obviously at the southern part of Evergreen Mills. Now inside there is a lone raider who has a flamer. I killed him and then used his flamer to repair my current flamer, and there's also some ammunition and stuff in here, along with a skill book, U.S. Army 30 Handy Flamethrower Recipes. And, of course, some ammunition and healing items, very, very typical. Then we can head into the main facility, and inside there's two main areas. You have, the entrance area and then the bazaar. So, obviously, first we'll go into the foundry area. And in here, again, the radio was blaring for whatever reason. My radio is at 0 volume, but for whatever reason, some of these radios continue to play music. This is an issue in Fallout 3, as I've not experienced this issue in Fallout New Vegas. So that is why the volume during this part is so quiet. Inside, there are a couple of raiders and a broken terminal. On the first floor, there really isn't a whole lot in terms of special loot, besides ammunition, caps, and healing items. And there's also a few weapons that you could take if you want them. So make sure to look around, take what loot you can scavenge, because there is some good stuff down here that could be useful for finishing or killing off everyone else in this place. Also, there's a lot of average picked locks, so coming here with 50 lockpick would probably be beneficial. That way you can get everything here easily, and you don't have to leave stuff behind or come back ever again. And then upstairs we can find a bunch of really good loot. So if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of raiders around here. Using this flamer was really effective against them, so this became my weapon of choice for the rest of Evergreen Mills. Now if you go to the right back there and you go in this room, you're going to find that stupid radio, along with a raider that, just came out of nowhere and tried to kill me. Now, inside of this room, there's a few notable things. Most notably, there's a Nuka grenade on the workbench and a average lock safe, which just contains some bottle caps and chems. But definitely get the Nuka grenade, pretty good. And next to the workbench is a bucket, and inside of the bucket are a lot of frag grenades, so definitely a very good find. Also, make sure to loot the desk because there is a key in it for the locked door across the hall. I originally didn't notice the key, but obviously you can use the key to get into the room. However, the room is only an average picked lock, so you can get in relatively easily. And like I said, many things in here are average locked. You definitely want to come in this room because there is a fat man. So take all of the flamer fuel, which was very useful for me, and a very easy safe. And behind me on the counter there is a fat man, which I used to repair my current fat man. So a really good find that was beneficial to me. And there are also a lot of chems, as you can see on the left there on that shelf: jet, buff out, and mentats. Even if you don't use them, they're worth a lot of money. Now if we jump down below, we can find a copy of Duck and Cover. You have to jump down on top of this kind of like shack thing, and there's a dead body on a bed. Next to that is the copy of Duck and Cover. And then moving on to the bazaar. The bazaar is the place I came the closest to being killed, and it was here that I noticed dog meat went missing. At first I thought he may have died, however, as you will see later, he actually didn't die. Just for whatever reason, he will not come into Evergreen Mills for me. I couldn't find anything about this on the wiki, so perhaps it's just a glitch unique to me. As you enter, there's going to be a bar, and behind the bar is a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum, along with some more healing items. Really good. I got a lot of stim packs in this place, so that was really helpful. This bazaar is really cool. You can kind of see how the raiders are living here. There's lots of gambling, there's lots of pool tables, and of course alcohol. And here we can see the entrance to the brothel. And here that raider got blown up by another raider with a missile launcher. And as I turned around, that raider had already reloaded and shot the missile, barely missing me, but almost killing me. Thankfully, the missile launcher takes a long time to reload, and I was able to kill that raider. Then, after sleeping, I made my way up into the brothel, where we can kill all of the raiders up here, and several people who are doing, some not so honest business. But kill everyone up here because inside of the locked cell is a skill book. But besides that, there wasn't a whole lot of loot on this floor. There is a cash register and a hunting rifle, along with some chems. But inside of this locked room, on the bunk next to the toilet, we can find a copy of Nikola Tesla and You. So a pretty good find. Fallout 3 has a lot of skill books, so definitely make sure to take them when you can get them because it'll help out maxing your character's stats. This area is really cool, I thought, and I can kind of see some of the maybe early inspiration for the casinos in Fallout New Vegas. We have these two giant dice, as you can see here. And a little bit of an interesting fact, the raider sitting at the fireplace near the southern shack, which we visited earlier, will hum, whistle, burp, and yawn at random times when considered friendly by the player. Obviously for us, he was definitely not considered friendly and was actually just quite aggressive. Also, outside there is a slave pen with 3 to 4 slaves that can be freed by the player. And finally, moving to the very back of the bazaar, we can find Smiling Jack. Now, Smiling Jack will not attack you, even though there is an aggressive raider in here, and he'll kind of freak out. Just kill the raider, make sure you don't accidentally hurt Jack, because Jack will be willing to trade with you, and he has some somewhat decent loot on him, such as ammunition and weapons. So definitely worth having, just an extra merchant around, I think, so try to avoid hurting him. And even though Smiling Jack is friendly, we can actually steal everything in this room, and there is a locked ammunition box with some energy cells, and there's also 6 cameras in here, which can be useful. In the back of this cavern, we can find a bottle cap mine, along with the bobblehead barter. So, really good finds in this area, and oddly enough, none of it is stealing, so thank you very much, Smiling Jack. Now, also worth mentioning on Smiling Jack is his vendor key, which will open his inventory container, so you can actually take a lot of his stuff that is on him if you want to be mean, or if you want to steal, or want to kill, up to you. And there you have it, Evergreen Mills. This is a location I really like, because for the most part, raiders within Fallout 3, and for the most part in Fallout 4, besides the Nuka-Cola DLC, raiders are just kind of these faceless, emotionless enemies that are there for us to fight and to kill. There is no real other point to them, but at least this location kind of gives more humanity or more development to the raiders. We can see they do have like social structures, and they do have an actual like economy within their faction. So I just kind of think it's cool. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. And there is also a teddy bear in the shopping cart. I don't know why it's here. I tried to lift it, and then the teddy bear started freaking out. So, kind of humorous. But besides that, there's not a whole lot in this area. I know what you're thinking. This is just a teddy bear. Teddy bears are friends. We might as well call this teddy bear Snugglepuff. And Snugglepuff is our new best friend. He's so cute, adorable, round button eyes, the softest caramel colored fur you've ever seen. He is huggable. He is for our bedtime. So, he is now ours. Who does this Professor French Fry think he is? Baiting interaction? What a fucker. I'm gonna take this teddy bear, show him. Ain't nothing about a teddy bear. Come here, you little cuddly, cute friend. Oh, now I'm over encumbered. That's fucking great. Alright, well, this is an issue, isn't it, dog meat? Oh my god, you've got to be fucking kidding me. And that pretty much sums up my entire reaction after seeing this super mutant behemoth spawn behind me just because I took a little teddy bear. Now, as far as you might be aware, I am lying. I was trying to bait interaction, but I'll be completely honest, I had no clue. On the Unexplored Mojave, I'm always just trying to find weird or interesting things that Bethesda or Obsidian put in their games. And this is one of those things. I just thought it was a teddy bear in a shopping cart. I wasn't going to take the teddy bear because teddy bears are kind of worthless in Fallout 3. But, lo and behold, this teddy bear unlocks a super mutant behemoth. Obviously, this teddy bear belongs to the super mutant behemoth. And what followed was a fight to save Dogmeat's life. And I have been paranoid because of you guys telling me that, oh, companions die easily. But I have to say, Dogmeat is a frickin' beast. He took so many hits, he took it like a champ, he even took a mini nuke, as you will see, and he didn't die. You guys told me companions in Fallout 3 die easily, but I think Dogmeat is actually Jesus. Here is the mini nuke. Dogmeat is still alive. I mean, the super mutant behemoth is also still alive. And yeah, Dogmeat might kind of almost be dead at this point. I mean, he's getting beat to a crisp. He took a mini nuke, but damn it, I was convinced and I knew I could save his life. And thanks to our trusty laser pistol, we could save the life of Dogmeat. Man, what a fight. A truly unforgettable experience in Fallout 3, and a barrel roll by the behemoth at the end to sum it all up. So happy, Dogmeat, you are such a good boy. I love you. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is the Unexplored Capital Wasteland, a very different episode based on a flip-flapping teddy bear. But I'm pretty happy with it. If you guys want to check out this location for yourself, it's located just west of Vault 101, northeast of Evergreen Mills. It's actually on the train tracks leading out of Evergreen Mills. And also a huge shout out to Professor French Fry. I think some people may have been kind of assholes about this, but French Fry was really cool. Thank you for the awesome comment. And I did check out this location as soon as he posted it because I was really curious about what the heck he was talking about. And I'm glad I did. As always, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any recommendations for the next location, please post them in the comment section below. Again, I really just can't thank you guys enough for the journey that this series has taken me on. Playing Fallout 3 is just so much fun. Playing Fallout New Vegas is just one of my favorite things to do, and now I can enjoy it with a large community. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. It really means a lot. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. We are joined today with two Brahmin who are just kind of chilling, watching us as we record. And today we are at Charnel House. This is a location in the far western part of the Capital Wasteland. Now, upon researching this location, I found out what a Charnel House is. It's not a name. Charnel House is used, or usually was used in the past, when cemeteries or burial grounds became full, or they needed to make more space. They would dig up the dead bodies and put the bones or whatever remains inside of the Charnel House. Usually they were just rooms piled with bones because cemeteries get full. The practice is not as common today, but there are still charnel houses in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere around the world. I just thought that was really interesting. And here on the mini-map, you can see the location of Charnel House, located just northwest of Evergreen Mill and northeast of Vault 112. Now, the house itself doesn't really seem like a charnel house to me, because it just seems like a farmstead inhabited by raiders. Now, there is a basement, and we cannot access much of the basement, so maybe there is bones or something down there, or perhaps raiders just took people here and killed them, and at one time there were a lot of bones. But as far as I can see, there's no evidence that this was a charnel house, and there's no cemetery or anything nearby. This one body did freak the hell out inside, though, after I killed him, so maybe it is haunted, and his spirit was leaving his body or something, and his body just completely freaked out. With Rex, killing the raiders was actually pretty easy. There was only a few of them, and after that we can explore the house. Now, there are tons of frag mines surrounding the house, so be careful. Outside of the house, we could see some graffiti, like a nuclear explosion, and there's some more graffiti inside. Here's the basement I mentioned, kind of a collapsed portion of the house, but there's nothing down here, but there is a barricade, so perhaps there is more behind that barricade. We just can't access it. That seems a bit scary, though, like a horror movie. But then we have a dead raider, and of course you want to loot them, get some ammunition. And I got really lucky because I just wasn't paying attention to the frag mines, and I was just jumping around like an idiot as the frag mines detonated. We have a dead tree and a car outside of the farm, or outside of the house, and I just thought that was a really cool scene. Upstairs, we can find a few ammunition boxes that will contain random ammunition. Make sure to grab that, and then also upstairs, up here, we can find a copy of Duck and Cover. So, really good. And then, if we come up on the southern part, there's a small hill with a staircase leading to the top of the hill, and you can get some very beautiful views of the surrounding area. Now, one reason I really like this location was there's a lot of small things kind of littered around this location. I had a lot of fun just kind of exploring around, seeing what there is. This is kind of why, or the purpose I wanted to start this series in the first place, which is kind of going to these locations, exploring around, and Charnel House did not disappoint. Now, there was a Yao Guai nearby that actually killed me once. Oops. The next time I came in, I had the high ground, and he couldn't reach me, and with Rex's help, we could kill him. Rex had a lot of power in that attack. And then just north of Charnel House, we have Scavenger's House. This is an abandoned outpost, or abandoned scavenger house, and there's just a bunch of junk inside, but we do have some things of note. There's an easy locked ammunition box, again with random loot. There's also a first aid box, again with random loot, and there's a toy car. Now, besides that, there isn't much on this part of the house, but on the opposite side of the house, we can find 2 beds, 2 pre-war books, and a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum. However, a lot of the loot inside of the house is considered stealing, and we can't use the beds, suggesting someone might live here. But, on the other hand, a lot of the loot is not considered stealing. Don't know what Bethesda's logic was behind programming this house. Some things are stealing, some things aren't stealing, but hey, whatever. And if we go to the west of the Charnel House, you're going to find a radio tower and perhaps a rad scorpion that's apparently killed a mole rat and a protectron, quite the rad scorpion. But you're going to find a radio tower that is unmarked, and if we head up to the radio tower, we will find signal Papa November. Now we have to turn on the radio tower, and using your radio, you can listen into the signal, and you'll get some Morse code. Now, according to the wiki, the translation of the Morse code is as follows. Calling all stations, any stations. This is the station's ID, invitation to transmit. So it seems like that somebody was trying to contact other stations, and if we head over to the northeast of the radio tower, we can find a sewer, and inside of the sewer is a dead woman, and the radio that was being used to transmit. So this is a bit similar to Relay Tower KXBA11 and the Oscar Zulu signal where we had a family that was calling for help. Perhaps this woman was also calling for help. Now in this sewer you can find various loot, including some pre-war books and a copy of Pugilism Illustrated, which is next to the ladder at the entrance. Who knows how long this woman was down here, if it was relatively recent, or relatively long ago, right at the time of the Great War. My guess would be during the Great War. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. I had a lot of fun making this video and exploring around this location. Now I have a lot of recommendations from long ago that I need to get to in Fallout 3, and I am working my way towards getting to those. It's just been a slow process, and I apologize about that. But if you have any recommendations for future locations in Fallout 3, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time. Since I started playing Fallout 3 for my Unexplored series, there's been one faction that has really grinded my gears, and that is the Talon Company. I literally did nothing to them, but because I have quote-unquote good karma, they decided that they need to kill me. So, me and Dogmeat thought it was about time that we took the fight to them. Enough of being ambushed as I exit locations, being killed by these sons of a bitches. It's time to take the fight to them at Fort Bannister. The Army of Otters here, and welcome to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be taking a look at Fort Bannister, which is the main base of operations for the Talon Company. Now, if you don't know, the Talon Company is a mercenary faction in Fallout 3, and there's not really a whole lot known about them, but they will attack you if you have good karma. So if you're someone like me who is just kind of playing the game as a somewhat decent person, these guys are kind of a dick. So I want to take them out. And here on the minimap, you can see the location of Fort Bannister, just north of Evergreen Mills, directly west of Vault 106 and Vault 101. Now, as you approach Fort Bannister, there is a large wall facing the south, but the entrance is also on the south. However, you cannot penetrate this wall, but if you climb up on the mountain to the west of the fort, you can easily get around the wall. And from here, me and Dogmeat began our sneak attack on the Talon Company. Now, you do need to be a bit careful when fighting these guys, because some of them have some pretty darn good weapons. Like this guy had a missile launcher, which I have not acquired yet. So I attacked him first, and he did get a missile fired at me. A couple of missiles he reloaded insanely fast, but thankfully none of those missiles hit me. Now at this point there was just so much shit going on. We were on a full-on battle for Fort Bannister. I picked up the missile launcher because there were so many enemies, and it actually proved to be a very good decision, especially here with this hit in VATS, where the missile hit a direct hit into this merc, and using the missile launcher we were able to relatively easily clear out the area of the Talon Company mercs. So before coming here, I'd highly recommend stocking up on some ammunition and healing items. That is something I did before going to this location, knowing I would have a pretty significant fight ahead of me. This is one of the big tests for me in Fallout 3. So far, I've actually kind of struggled in Fallout 3 as far as combat. I'm not nearly as familiar with the game as, say, Fallout New Vegas or Skyrim, so this has proven to be a much bigger challenge for me than either of those two games. However, I feel pretty confident with Fallout 3 after this engagement with the Talon Company. Now, I killed off the stragglers that are found around the base, and as you fight your way around the base, you'll notice that this base, Fort Bannister, is in really bad condition. While Fort Bannister is not a real location in real life, we can assume it was a major base for the US government in its war against China. So during the Great War, the Chinese probably had a significant target on this military installation. Now, as you make your way around Fort Bannister, make sure to loot everything, especially the ammunition boxes and the Talon Company mercs, because they'll have some really good weapons and loot on them. I used a lot of the weapons I found, such as Chinese assault rifles, flamers, sniper rifles, missile launchers to repair my weapons and to have higher quality weapons. Now, towards the northern section of Fort Bannister, you're going to find a tent in the middle of this destroyed building. There will be a lone merc inside of the tent, and for me, he had a missile launcher. Me and Dogmeat killed him, and then took his supplies or his weapons. And inside, there's going to be a drainage pipe. And this will take us to the commanding officer's quarters, kind of a secret entrance. If you saw earlier, the Fort Bannister bunker is actually locked with a very hard lock, so unless you have a 100 lockpick, you cannot access it. The only way to access it is going through this route, which is not locked, and we can go from behind. And I should say this was a secret entrance maybe in the pre-war era, since it seems to be hidden at the bottom of this building. However, for the Talon Company, it seems to be their main entrance into this facility. There are so many mercs inside this part of the bunker, so be prepared for a significant fight. Having Dogmeat with me was a big help, along with using the laser rifle. I was able to actually take out a lot of the mercs and the turrets relatively easily. But again, having a companion with me, such as Dogmeat, was a significant help as he drew away the fire of many of the NPCs. As you loot through this kind of missile silo, you're going to drop down on top of this final kind of enclosed area, and you can find a copy of Nikola Tesla and You, along with an ammunition crate that will have random loot inside of it. As we push further into the bunker, eventually you'll come up on their sleeping or living quarters. There are several bunk beds inside of this room, along with several mercs. But for me and Dogmeat, and the combat shotgun was super useful at close range, we were able to make somewhat quick work of the mercs. That one merc there just died a very terrible death. Now, inside of these living quarters, I couldn't really find any significant loot, but it's worth looking for any kind of ammunition crates and stuff like that. As I pushed further back into the bunker, I found what I believe to be some kind of infirmary, and it is guarded by this merc with a flamethrower. Definitely take his flamer to repair your current flamer, or if you don't have one. And something nefarious was probably going on in this room, because we have two dead wastelanders, but there's no rhyme or reason why they're dead, but perhaps the Talon Company was experimenting on them. But besides that, there was nothing else I could find on this level of the bunker, so using the staircase, we can dive deeper into the bunker, and you'll eventually enter in this kind of central chamber, which appears to be some kind of water purification plant. I found this room to be kind of challenging because you had several mercs on this central platform, along with a turret above them. But using the missile launcher, we were able to take out a lot of their health, and Dogmeat cleaned up the scraps. That explosion destroyed the auto turret, which was a big help, and Dogmeat then cleaned up. Now, the water in this room is radioactive, and there are radiation signs around it, which makes me wonder if it's powering or cooling down, some kind of nuclear reactor, or something like that to help power this bunker. But probably not for drinking, since it is irradiated. As we move deeper into the bunker, we come up on some kind of mess hall, where obviously the Talon Company and former US soldiers would have eaten. We can make our way further, and we kind of come to this four-way intersection. there is a hard locked door here and an average lock terminal. Bypassing the terminal security, and we can disengage the lock. Now this room is actually optional. I got attacked from behind while I unlocked it. But inside of this room, you're actually going to find a lot of good loot. I found a lot of stim packs and a lot of useful ammunition. But be careful in this part because Talon Company mercs might come from behind you. Now, across from this locked door is kind of the central command center for this bunker, or now probably being used by the Talon Company. But here is me looting the room. Again, first aid boxes and some ammunition crates. There was even some like recon armor and stuff in here that, hey, you might find useful. But I'm using power armor, so I wasn't all that interested. Again, across the way, we can enter the central command area of this bunker. There is a locked terminal, which we can use to turn the turrets against the Talon Company, and I would recommend doing this if you can, because the leader of the mercs, of the Talon Company mercs at Fort Bannister, is found within this room. His name is Commander Japsko, and Japsko is pretty tough. He has a lot of health. As you can see there, he took a hit from a missile launcher, and he really didn't give a shit, so he's going to take a lot of hits for me. It took several hits from the missile launcher, several hits from dog meat, and several hits from the laser rifle to kill him. As you can see there, he is equipped with a missile launcher himself, and he got a hit on me, which significantly reduced my health. Lucky I didn't die there. But at close range, he'll pull out a combat knife, and he is a lot less threatening at close range. Upon killing Japsko, definitely make sure to loot his body, because he has some unique items on him. First, we have a unique combat knife called Occam's Razor, and also a unique combat helmet called the Talon Combat Helmet. Now, as we make our way into this main headquarters, there's one more turret, which we have to destroy, and there's not a whole lot in this command center. However, behind a locked footlocker, there is a Nuka-Cola Quantum, so definitely pick that up. And in the footlocker, you can find some good loot, and we can unlock it using Japsko's key. After that, we can go on to the next section of the bunker, and this is the main bunker of Fort Bannister, the one that was before, behind a very hard lock. But there's just going to be a few mercs in here, some stragglers that you'll have to kill off. Not too difficult, especially with the combat shotgun. Man, we really messed him up. And just how dog meat went crazy there. I was going to say, this guy had a missile launcher at close range, but pretty easy to kill off these guys with close range weapons and dog meat. Now, there is one item of note inside of here. Eventually, you're going to find this kind of storage room, and there's going to be a gun cabinet. It took me a little bit to figure this out, but on top of the gun cabinet, there is a copy of Guns and Bullets. So definitely make sure to pick that up. A good skill magazine, always worth having. But after that, we can leave the bunker using Japsko's key, and we're back outside, back where we started. Now, there is still one more area at Fort Bannister for us to clear out, and that is Fort Bannister Main. It is locked behind a very easy lock, which makes it pretty easy, and like before, you're going to find several Talon Company mercs inside. Now, I actually found this battle to be pretty difficult because you can be shot from several angles, from above, from behind, so I found it best to rush into this hallway for some cover, kill the lone Talon Company merc inside of this hallway, and then you have some cover in order to clear out the rest of the building. Inside that hallway is nothing besides another entrance to Fort Bannister Main. But with no desire to leave this facility yet, I made my way upstairs, killing more Talon Company mercs. And you'll definitely want to go upstairs because we can actually find some pretty decent loot inside of the upper floors. So kill the mercs and make your way to the top, and we'll find a kind of command center for what we can assume was the old command center here at Fort Bannister. You can go left or right here. I recommend going right first and then going left. But if we go right, we can find the command center that I was talking about. And there's going to be a few wall safes in here. And they all contain kind of same loot. Just some bottle caps and some pre-war money. But definitely make sure to unlock them. But besides that, not a whole lot in here. Heading back and going left, we can find another staircase, along with an average locked door at the bottom of the staircase. Inside we can find a fat man and a big book of science. Now, according to the wiki, there is a mini nuke in here. However, I looked for about a minute or so, and I tried looking it up online, and I could not find a mini nuke. So if anyone knows where the mini nuke is, or perhaps it just glitched out for me, please let me know in the comments section below. But there's also some ammunition boxes, so we can take some ammunition. But no mini nuke as far as I'm concerned, but perhaps I'm just blind, perhaps it was in the video, and I'm just an idiot. Either way, we can then make our way back outside, and we have successfully cleared Fort Bannister. I had a ton of fun playing through this location. It felt like a real kind of military engagement, and with Dogmeat at my side, it was really enjoyable. On top of this mountain, we have like 3 antennas, probably used in the pre-war era to communicate or send messages or whatever. Also, I wanted to mention that south of Fort Bannister, just across the street, there is a large radioactive crater. Now, there's no indication about where the nukes fell in Washington, D.C., in the Capital Wasteland. We just know hundreds of them fell, but we can assume Fort Bannister would have been a major target for the Chinese, as I mentioned earlier, and this crater offers some evidence that an atomic bomb did in fact detonate very close to Fort Bannister, which would explain the extremely sorry state that it is currently in. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. I had a lot of fun checking out this location, fighting through this location, and making this video. If you guys have any recommendations for a future location in Fallout 3, please post it in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal. Now this is a location just north of Fort Bannister, and it's kind of tucked in the middle of this canyon, and it was used for radioactive waste disposal during the pre-war era, and now we're just left with a lot of radiation and a lot of just, shit. So, let's go ahead and check out Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal Site. And here you can see the location on the world map north of Fort Bannister, almost directly west of Vault 106. Now, as you approach the dump, or the disposal site, from the south, like I am from Fort Bannister, you'll come up on an office building and a locked gate. So I decided to go ahead and go in the office building, and there are some rad roaches inside. Very threatening, of course. And there's also a locked terminal, average locked. I went ahead and unlocked the terminal, only to discover that it unlocks the safe in the back of the room. So I unlocked the safe in order to get its contents. And after that, I went ahead and looted these desks on the right here, as you can see. And in the back of the room, we can find a bookshelf along with the safe. I went ahead and looted the safe, which has some pretty darn good loot in it, including a stealth boy and a lot of caps. Now on the bookshelf, there is a first aid box with medical equipment, and next to the first aid box is a DC Journal of Medicine, so definitely a very good find. Then we can go down to the basement, which will connect us to the office inside of the disposal site. Now in the basement here, we can find some rad roaches, and up here we can also find some green goop that is dripping out of a pipe and is radioactive. We have these shelves and a locker in the back which contain some pretty darn good medical supplies like Rad-X, some stim packs, Radaway, and inside the average lock we can find some Radaway and a radiation suit. So some really darn good loot. And using a radiation suit here is advised because of course there's a lot of radiation since it was a radiation disposal site. And there's also this easy locked first aid box, as you could see, which had some pretty darn good loot inside of it. As we come out of the basement on this northern building, we will find some more rad roaches, or just one rad roach. And there's also a bottle cap mine on this workbench. So that is really good, actually. Those bottle cap mines have saved my ass several times during my playthrough. And there's also a bottle of Nuka-Cola Quantum. Now, as you exit the door here, be extremely careful, because I did not know that there is a mine here, blew it up, and this Wastelander was just standing here, and was just like, hey, what's up, my guy, even though I almost blew him up. He did take some damage, and then he was very rude to me. I actually considered shooting him, but I decided to be a good person, and, just forgive the fact that he almost fucking murdered me. Then as we go to the northern part of the disposal area, we just find kind of a hill with some floodlights on it, and then we can find some water, like radioactive water with barrels, a small bridge over it, and a gate from the north. And if you come here as a higher level, it is worth noting that a Deathclaw might spawn here. I was actually quite disappointed to find there was no Deathclaw here, because I do remember fighting a Deathclaw here in my very early memories of Fallout 3. However, he wasn't here because I'm a low level. Now, if you head to the northwest of the Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal, you will find a crashed truck with a lot of radioactive waste that is coming out of it. Obviously, it was probably making a delivery to the waste disposal site, and there is a Nuka-Cola Quantum at the base of the wreckage. So definitely make sure to take it. Now, also worth noting is there are a fuck ton of rad scorpions in this area, so make sure to kill them. And if you come up here, there is a crashed bus, which has a lunchbox and some darts inside of it, so worth looting if you are in the area. And then there was some more rad scorpions, so make sure to take them out. And as we made our way towards the south, we could find a small shack. Be careful as you approach the shack because there are 2 frag mines inside of it, so make sure to disarm it. There is an empty footlocker, unfortunately, but there are some ammunition and mine boxes, so that is definitely worth a peek to see what you get. For me, this had a lot of frag mines, so I took all of them, and I'll probably just sell them later, and then a good amount of ammunition. And then I just wanted to point out, if you head to the eastern part of this area, you can actually get a very good view of the Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal from above. And that's how I recorded the scenic shot, which you will see later in the video. So I just thought it would give you a very good vantage point, especially if there's a Deathclaw here. It would give you a very good vantage point over the Deathclaw. And it is also worth mentioning that Jalbert Brothers is some kind of waste disposal company in the pre-war era. In Fallout 4, we can find a similar location called Jalbert Brothers Disposal. This is specifically called Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal. So obviously there was some kind of pre-war disposal company that dealt with like radioactive waste, which is very important for this area. Also worth noting is that there is a trigger for a Type A random encounter just outside of the office door on the north, kind of like you saw earlier for me with the random wastelander that was there and the frag mine that went big boom. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future location or a future video, please post them in the comments section below. Also, I just wanted to reiterate, I have a long list of locations that have been recommended to me in Fallout 3. I apologize for not being faster in Fallout 3. However, I've just been working a lot more on Fallout New Vegas. So I greatly appreciate your guys' patience. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Shacktown, which is also known as the Wasteland Gypsy Village in the Fallout 3 official game guide. But in the code of the game, it is referred to as Shacktown. So for the purpose of this video, I'm going to call it Shacktown. Now, I was really surprised to find this unmarked location just north of Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal, which was the location we visited in the last video. This location is pretty darn cool, but it features kind of a tragic story told purely through the environment and its residents. So let's check out Shacktown. And here on the minimap, you can see the location just north of the Jalbert Brothers and Fort Bannister, just west of Vault 106 and Big Town. So as you approach the town, you're going to find a lot of hostile ghouls inside of the town, and there's also a chance that creatures can wander into the town because of the lack of walls. Now, these wastelanders are pretty darn easy to kill, as you can see here. However, later in the video, as you will see, I got attacked by a Yaoguai who just wandered on by. Now, I was reading on the wiki that it's very common to have other creatures attack you or the wastelanders in this location because there's no form of protection. Now, as we make our way through, we will notice that all of these wastelanders are ghouls, and we have no choice but to fight them. However, they don't seem to be feral because they're not trying to claw out your eyes. They're actually smart enough to use guns and grenades and other weapons. Here's the Yaoguai I mentioned earlier, and I used this kids play UFO in order to kill the Yaoguai, kind of just doing circles around the UFO until I could get his health down and kill him. Now, off in the meantime, Rex was busy taking out many of the Wastelanders, and this was the last Wastelander up on this hill. pretty easy to kill, as you can see. Now, inside of Shacktown, there are 3 actual buildings you can enter and loot, along with various smaller shacks that you can loot and find stuff like ammunition crates and other random loot. Now, first I wanted to check out these buses on the eastern part of Shacktown, and there are some things of interest, not as far as loot, there's really not a whole lot inside of them, but there is a pre-war book and a camera that cannot be picked up or interacted with. Normally we can interact with such objects, but for whatever reason here, we cannot pick them up, we cannot move them. It is literally impossible. So I just thought it was worth noting because it's quite strange. I don't know why they are like that. Heading over to the northernmost shack, we will find a picnic table with 2 ammunition crates underneath. They can be sometimes a bit difficult to access just because of the picnic table. Then inside the northernmost shack, we will find a lone wastelander who will be killed by me and dog meat. Then there's a small kitchen and living area, but not much inside of there. There's also a dresser with nothing inside of it. The main thing is by the door, there is a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor, along with a stealth boy on the table, so a pretty darn good find. Now, also I just thought this playground was interesting. It kind of tells me that maybe children once lived inside of this town, and that the residents built this playground for their kids. However, obviously, it has fallen into complete disarray, and there are no more children here. Then, heading over to the southeasternmost shack, we can find a very haunting scene inside. There lay about 6 or so skeletons on the floor. They all awoke as soon as I entered the room, and there's something truly terrible happening inside of here. We can see that whoever had this room was using those tables as some kind of barrier. We can find a lot of ammunition, a mini nuke, which is pretty darn good, a copy of Duck and Cover, and of course a laser rifle. So something very terrible happened in there. Perhaps they were trying to keep out some very bad people. Then, at the southwesternmost shack, we will find a fridge that has a copy of Tumblers Today inside of it. And also worth mentioning that these shacks, like the Dunwich building, have the wrong cardinal directions inside, meaning we entered this building facing the southwest. However, once we are inside, we're facing the southeast. This is probably just a design overlook, but, you know, it's worth mentioning because it is a little bit scary and adds to the haunting nature of this place. And in this bathtub, we can find a skeleton with a toaster in the bathtub, signifying that this person killed themselves. As you could see earlier, I got some ammunition from an ammunition crate. There's also a combat shotgun and some shotgun shells inside. But that makes up those 3 buildings, all 3 of which, like I said, have the wrong cardinal directions inside against the outside. And at the top of this hill, we just have one of the various shacks that are around this place with some ammunition crates. Definitely look out for these shacks as they do contain random loot, as you can see me going through here. There's also a shack kind of at the top of this mountain that is next to the Jalbert brothers disposal site. However, we cannot access it, so we're just kind of left to guess what happened inside. And there we have it, Shacktown. A very haunting area with all of these ghouls. It really makes me wonder what actually transpired here. We have an abandoned playground, a lot of abandoned shacks, and a very hostile citizenry. Personally, I think these people settled here relatively recently, and perhaps due to the radiation in the area, specifically at the Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal, that the people here started turning into ghouls. It would explain why there's all of those dead bodies in that one shack that appear to be trying to defend the entrance. But who knows what happened here? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. So, who knows what transpired here, but I do think this is a very cool location, which I had no recollection of. Perhaps I've actually never visited this location before. It is unmarked, and it is a bit easy to miss, being in the northwestern part of the map. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future video, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Rock Breaker's Last Gas alongside Sniper Shack. Now this location is really freaking awesome and I have no memory of either of these locations. Rock Breaker's Last Gas is just a small gas station, however there's a pretty cool enclave encounter here, and then above the gas station is Sniper Shack, which has a plethora of amazing loot inside of it. along with 2 fluffy, furry pets for us to take care of. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Rockbreaker's Last Gas alongside Sniper Shack. And here you can see the location of Rockbreaker's Last Gas, just northwest of Jalbert Brothers and Shacktown, which we visited in the last 2 episodes. Now, as you approach, do be careful because there will be some creatures such as Yao Guai and some rad scorpions, but no big problem for me and dog meat. Now, as I was approaching Rockbreaker's Last Gas, I was really surprised to find it was actually an Enclave outpost, and that the Enclave managed to spot me from pretty far away. However, I used this tree, and I also brought out a mini nuke in order to deal with these guys a lot faster, and it was pretty successful. I sent 2 soldiers just flying, and then there was just an officer left that me and Dogmeat could easily take care of. So after you've cleared out all of the Enclave, you might want to try looting them, because one of the Enclave soldiers for me had Tesla power armor, which is pretty darn good. I really wanted that. So I took his power armor, and he also had a missile and some railroad spikes and just some good weapons. So definitely loot through the guys that you kill. And at this point, there was actually 1 Enclave soldier left, and while me and Dogmeat were fighting him, we got flanked by a rad scorpion. So like I said, be careful of the creatures, and then me and Dogmeat made very quick work of this Enclave soldier. Dogmeat is an absolute beast of a unit, and he is definitely carrying our team, at least, well, whatever team this is between me and him. Now, after killing the soldier, I was actually over and crumbled, so I had to make a quick travel to Megaton to store some of my equipment. Then I came back to loot even more. And there is an Enclave crate and some lockers, however, there was not much loot inside of them for me. Over here by these Nuka-Cola vending machines, we have a dead Wastelander, along with some junk food and just some random bottles and stuff. And I also wanted to mention that on top of the Nuka-Cola machine, there is a Nuka-Cola Quantum. You can actually see it here, but I didn't see it yet. I found this Enclave scientist just kind of spying on me. I got a very lucky shot in and killed him. I don't know what he was doing. And here is the Nuka-Cola Quantum, which you can see. I reckon the scientist just really wanted this Quantum, but he was too scared to fight me and Dogmeat. So sad. After that, though, we pretty much cleared out this area, and we can move on to Sniper Shack, which you can see to the west here on top of the mountain behind the setting sun. A very beautiful scene, I may add. Now, over here, we have this kind of like what I think might be a quarry, and there are sometimes super mutants that will spawn around here, and we'll actually see them later. However, there's nothing inside of this quarry, just kind of some junk and what appears to be some kind of garbage dump. And then we made our way up, and over here on the western part of the quarry is where I encountered the super mutants, 3 of them to be exact, and all of them were super mutant brutes, I'm assuming because of my level. So me and Rex kind of got into a pretty hefty dogfight that was kind of difficult, but we managed to survive, we managed to get through it, and with that we could loot their bodies and take what ammunition and stuff they had on them. However, they really didn't have a lot. After that, we can make our way to the top of the mountain, and we can see Sniper Shack. Now, inside Sniper Shack, we'll get some really wonderful loot. This is an unmarked location, however, so just go to the Rockbreaker's Last Gas to access it. Inside, immediately to your right, we can find 2 named rad roaches, Fluffy and Jitters. They are stuck inside of a cage, and these are the only 2 rad roaches in the game that are named. However, they are hostile, so I kind of have to kill them, but good news is they will respawn, so they are actually immortal. Dogmeat killed the other one, and then you can actually open their cage to let them out if you want. Over here in these lockers, we have some random loot, but not much in them. However, on one of the lockers, there is a stealth boy. It is on the locker, not in the locker. Inside of this wooden crate on the workbench, we can find a copy of Dean's Electronics. There's also a bottle cap mine that I missed, but you can see it there on the bottom part of the workbench. Then there's a bed with a drunk teddy bear. The teddy bear is actually oversized, so kind of funny. Only one of 2 oversized teddy bears in the entire game. The other one being inside of the Red Racer factory. Then there's also this average lock safe, which will have random leveled loot inside of it. Then there's a very hard locker, which contains the Victory Rifle, a special sniper rifle. And while I don't have 100 lockpick, I do have Dogmeat. And using Dogmeat's ability to search for a weapon nearby, he can actually bypass the lock and bring you the victory rifle like you can see here. You definitely want to get this rifle if you can, so either bring a 100 lockpick with you or bring Dogmeat. Here's the supersized teddy bear being possessed by the ghost of a child and flying out of the shack, so definitely be careful if you want to take the teddy bear for yourself. That supersized teddy bear is actually evil. There's also a plethora of 10 cans inside of here for whatever reason, probably as a food source for whoever lived here. But as you exit, do be careful because you'll most likely be attacked by Talon Company mercs or regulators depending on your karma. However, these mercs were pretty ill-equipped. They mainly only had melee weapons besides this guy that I shot off a cliff. But I swear, these motherfuckers are always ready for me. And as if that wasn't enough, a vertibird came flying in and dropped off some more Enclave soldiers to fight me. I used a mini nuke to clear out a sentry bot because I wasn't about to fight that, and then using my newly acquired victory rifle, and with help from Dogmeat still, we were able to kill the other Enclave soldier. So there you have it, Rockbreaker's Last Gas, Sniper Shack, and a small quarry next to both of them. I am pretty convinced it is some kind of quarry or mine, just because of the name of the gas station is Rockbreaker. So, you know. But who knows? Anyways, this location was freaking awesome. I really enjoyed exploring it. There was just so much going on that made it a very cool and fun experience. Very exciting. Also worth noting that there's just such amazing loot in this location, so you have a very good reward after all of the fighting. This is one of my favorite locations I've actually experienced in Fallout 3 so far. I highly recommend it if you've never been here before. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future video, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Everglow National Campground. This is a location very close to Jalbert Brothers disposal site, along with Rockbreaker's Last Gas and Sniper Shack, all of which we checked out in the previous episodes. Now, I don't know where this location got its name. It's not a real-life location, however, the name Everglow, glow like radiation and Fallout maybe from the Jalbert Brothers disposal site? I don't know, but it's just an idea because this location is very close to a radioactive disposal site. But without further ado, let's jump into it. And here on the minimap, you can see Everglow National Campground next to the Jalbert Brothers Waste Disposal and Rockbreaker's Last Gas, just west of Vault 106 and Vault 101. Now, as I approached from the north, I ran into a pack of super mutants who were just kind of wandering around, but they were pretty easy to kill with my newly acquired victory rifle, which we procured in the last video. So, definitely a very amazing weapon because it easily knocks over enemies when rendering them completely defenseless. After that, I made my way towards Everglow National Campground. All of the trees here are completely scorched, but we can see at one point in time, this would have been a heavily forested area and probably quite beautiful. As I approached the campground, it was occupied by raiders. Now, a lot of the times when you come to this campground, you will find the raiders and super mutants fighting one another. However, I had a really strange interaction at this place, which you will see here in a little bit. I don't know if it's normal, but I couldn't find anything on the internet, so I'm just going to assume it is not normal. But there are some minor fortifications in the area using cars and other debris, and then we also have these trailers that didn't have anything in it. But one trailer actually does have pretty good loot, but that trailer also led to my very wild interaction. Up here on the northern part of the campground, we find an array of picnic tables, and on one of these picnic tables is a first aid box that has some random healing items inside of it, and also we have some barbecues, which would have been used, obviously, in the pre-war era. And then as we make our way over to the western part of the campground, there is a trailer that has some pretty good loot in it. However, as soon as I entered the trailer, a group of raiders and a group of super mutants just spawned into the game, literally right next to me. There were explosions, missiles, grenades just flying all over the place. Absolute chaos, but it was pretty freaking cool. I don't know where these guys came from. They literally just spawned out of thin air as soon as I walked into this trailer. I don't know why that was, but it was pretty freaking funny and pretty freaking cool. A full-out firefight ended up happening between the raiders, the super mutants, and of course myself. Now, besides this really fun interaction, the trailer has a lot of notable loot inside of it. There is a copy of Guns and Bullets, and also in that same trailer we can find 11 boxes of sugar bombs. Freaking amazing, which are usable in the unmarked quest, Murphy's Bombing Run, because you need sugar bombs in that unmarked quest for making a special type of jet. So definitely something that you might be interested in if you want to get Ultra Jet. But besides that, just loot the dead bodies, and that's that. Now, I did want to mention there is a really wild tree here that has like 3 skeletons hanging up from it. I'm guessing that the raiders or the super mutants did this, but just a really kind of off-putting and wild scene inside of this campground. And I didn't find anything on the internet about it. I was just kind of walking around looking for a scenic shot, and I saw those skeletons in the tree, and I was like, wow, that's freaking wild. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future video or future location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here. Welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Broadcast Tower KT8. This is a location in the far northwest of the map, just north of Little Lamplight and Vault 87. Now this location might just seem very inconspicuous, there's nothing, bad going on here, but there is some very interesting secrets at this location. So, without further ado, let's check out Broadcast Tower KT8. And as I mentioned earlier, this location is northwest of Vault 87, near Rockbreaker's Last Gasp and Everglow Campground, which we covered in previous videos. Now, if you approach this location from the south, as I did, be prepared to fight some rad scorpions along with a Mr. Gutsy. The Mr. Gutsy is kind of difficult, but I had a well-placed grenade which blew him sky high, rendering him incapacitated or something like that. Either way, he fell to the ground, and I was able to easily kill him and then take the loot that was on his dead corpse. Now, as we approach the radio station, you're going to encounter several super mutants. Now, I do have to say, initially, I was a bit surprised to see a super mutant master here, but I am leveling up, I am getting better weapons, and I am getting better armor, so, it makes sense. It is fair. I do have to give a little bit of credit to Bethesda for their leveling system. Of course, a lot of people aren't a big fan of that system, but I do have to say, for exploration purposes, it's a pretty cool system because I can go anywhere on the map and fight enemies that are catered to my level, which is fantastic for this series. Anyways, after killing all the super mutants, we can find the radio antenna, and next to it is a power switch, and upon turning on the power switch, we can tune into Signal Sierra Romeo. This signal is just some Morse code, and it translates to calling all stations, any stations. This is the station's ID, invitation to transmit to this station. It'll just keep beeping and beeping and beeping until you turn it off, or you find the source of the transmission. Now, the source of the transmission is in this small canyon just below the radio station to the north. There is a sewage tunnel which we can open, and immediately to our left is a door. Upon entering this small room, we can find what appears to be some kind of trap door, along with all kinds of pre-war food and some pre-war books and stuff like that. So some pretty good stuff that you might want to loot or you might be interested in. And then over here on this desk, we can find an encryption key, which will give us access to the other terminal, not this terminal. This terminal is broken. We cannot access it, but the desk terminal we can access with the encryption key, which will allow us to open the trap door. This allows us to find a very interesting discovery. We can find 2, obviously dead, Chinese remnant spies. These have dirty Chinese jumpsuits on them, which we can take, which I was very interested in because it is a bit of a unique item, along with a special ops manual to increase our sneak, and a mini nuke, along with some purified bodies of water and a Chinese Remnant Spy hat. So we have some pretty interesting loot in this area, along with an interesting possible backstory of 2 dead spies. Now, also at this location, there is apparently a possibility of an encounter with the Enclave, where 2 vertibirds will show up. However, one of the vertibirds will be shot down by a super mutant. I did not see this encounter despite completing the Waters of Life quest. So, I don't know if it's just very rare or if it's unlikely, but if you've experienced it, please post it in the comments section below. This is a really cool location within Fallout 3. Fallout 3 does a very good job of environmental storytelling. I do have to give credit to Bethesda there. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future video, future location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out the Abandoned Car Fort. This is just a small makeshift fort in the northwestern part of the map, made using pre-war cars, and obviously it is abandoned. Now this location is very close to Shalebridge, and we'll talk a lot about Shalebridge in a future episode. But for now, let's dive into the Abandoned Car Fort. And here you can see the location of the Abandoned Car Fort on the minimap next to Shalebridge in the far western reaches of the map, kind of as you make your way towards Raven Rock. Now, be careful in this area. There are lots of NPCs that could fight you, such as Yaoguai. You could also encounter hostile ants and also peaceful ants at Shalebridge. And you can also encounter Mirelurks and mole rats and just all kinds of random NPCs, so definitely be ready. Now, the car fort itself is pretty small, but it is kind of cool. All of these pre-war cars stacked upon one another to form the fortifications. I don't know how anyone would have been able to do this. It would have required a lot of manpower, but we don't know who did it, but possibly raiders. There's a lot of ammunition boxes and some beds that you can use, and there's also a copy of Tales of a Junktown Jerky Vendor next to the northwestern bed, so definitely pick that up. Now, if we head to the south of the Abandoned Car Fort, we will find this irradiated pond that will give you radiation. And on the southern edge of the pond, we can find some ant eggs. And in between these ant eggs is a dead raider. Next to the dead raider is a stealth boy, along with a copy of the DC Journal of Medicine. So some really good finds and really good loot. Now, I just wanted to point out that as I went further south, I actually found what I think is a child's grave, or just some kind of grave. We can see that this section of the dirt has been dug up, and there's all kinds of just random trash and stuff here, and like a toy car. Not really sure what happened here or what this is, but just something I found that I thought was interesting. Now, heading back to the car fort, I just thought this part of the map was really beautiful. This highway is really cool the way it's elevated over the river, so I decided to go ahead and explore this highway to see where it goes, because I had really no recollection of this part of the map from my earlier playthrough. So I saved in case I accidentally jumped off the map, and I made my way down the road. In the back of this truck, we found a dancing skeleton, interesting, and then 2 empty metal boxes, so nothing of note. Then we made our way even further down, and we found a crashed bus. I don't know where the other half went, but there was nothing inside. Made our way even further down, there was a crashed truck, which had nothing, and then a crashed military truck, which did have some ammunition boxes on it that we could take, obviously, for ammunition. Also, next to the car fort, there's another ammunition box hidden on the eastern part of it, so I just wanted to point that out. And then I made my way up the road towards Raven Rock, which you can see in the distance. There is an Enclave encampment on the road, so you're going to have to take them out. Just wanted to show how lucky these Enclave soldiers got as my missile whizzed past them. However, the next missile, they were not so lucky. And also thanks to Dogmeat, we were able to easily take out this Enclave encampment. And in this encampment, that we can obviously loot the dead bodies of the Enclave that we just killed, and we can get some pretty decent armor and weapons from them, along with ammunition. Also, there are a few Enclave crates that are definitely worth checking out, because for me, they had some ammunition, and along with 80 bottle caps, which I thought was pretty good. Also at this encampment, there's a lot of dead Brahmin, a dead Wastelander, and a dead Ghoul. I'm assuming they were killed by the Enclave, but I don't know what the Enclave was doing with their bodies, Perhaps they were just throwing him into the river, but I don't really know. Alright guys, and there you have it, Abandoned Car Fort. This location was really cool. I actually really enjoyed checking out this location and just kind of exploring around on the highway. And it was just a part of the map that I thought was really beautiful, really cool looking, and I don't remember it at all. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for a future video or future location, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Shalebridge. Now, this might seem like a pretty, small location with nothing here, just kind of a fast travel point maybe for Raven Rock, but this has actually become one of my favorite locations in the entire game. I just absolutely fell in love with this place. So, without further ado, let's see what this ant-infested location has to offer. And here's the location on the world map, just south of the Abandoned Car Fort and just northwest of Rockbreaker's Last Gas. Now, as I approached from the south, I had a random encounter with a Wastelander running away from some raiders, and then she blew up. I didn't know if I could save her or not, but maybe I should have tried. But I was a bit scared because I thought she was going to go kaboom, and well, she did go kaboom. Then me and Dogmeat killed off all of the raiders, and we could then approach Shalebridge. Now, Shalebridge is actually just a destroyed radio tower. We cannot activate it, and there's a small canyon and a bridge next to the radio tower. Inside of the canyon, I also had another random encounter with some Talon mercs, but because Rex is an absolute badass and flew down into the canyon, and then I was shooting them from above, it was actually a pretty easy fight. Then a super mutant also showed up from across the canyon, and I just shot him dead. But a pretty fun encounter nonetheless, and then I looted the Talon Company mercs. Then here is the bridge that I mentioned earlier that goes across the canyon. And I know what you might be thinking to yourself right now, this location seems kind of lame there, Otter. Well, that's because that isn't everything. If we go to the northwest of this location, we can find 2 ant mounds, along with a hostile ant. I figured there's always hostile ants spawning in this location. Now, there's one ant mound over here in the far northwest, with some golden eggs that are surrounding it. Now, you need to be careful of this ant mound because I actually got attacked by 2 Yaoguai while filming this, so do be careful. This is very close to the Abandoned Car Fort, just a bit to the north. And then across this valley is the other ant mound. Now, the ant mound that is very close to Shalebridge is filled with friendly ants. So we will enter that ant mound first. And we'll talk more about this cave later in the video. But for now, I just want to show that if you go to the very back of this cave, you will find that there is a war between these invader or soldier ants and these really cute mutated forager ants. The forager ants are very kind. They don't have any hostility, and if you touch the invader ant, it says it appears that these ants are from a different colony, and that the invader ants will probably win, but perhaps we can do something. So we head on over to the other ant mound. We will find this ant mound is filled with tons of hostile soldier ants. Now, as you enter, there's really 2 paths you can take, left or right. It doesn't really matter which way you go because they just loop around. And I found this cave system to be a bit confusing, so I'll do my best to explain it. Basically, I went right from the entrance, and then you're going to go down this long tunnel into this small little side chamber. Inside of this chamber, you're going to find a dead body, along with all kinds of good loot, like metal armor and several chems. So definitely make sure to pick those up on your way through. Even if you don't use chems, you can sell them for a pretty penny. Also, there is the metal armor that I mentioned earlier. Then, as we continued further into the cave, we will go down into these like slides, I guess, or these little slants in the cave, and then it opens up into this main central chamber. And this chamber is where the queen ant is, and we need to kill the queen ant. Now, the queen ant is in the northern portion of this main chamber, and she can be a bit of a difficult fight. I used a missile launcher along with a really overpowered Dogmeat in order to kill her. Now, I wanted to mention, if you come to this ant mound first and you kill the queen ant, when you go to the other ant mound, there will be no invader ants inside, which of course that's fine, just you can't get that cool little message that tells you that, hey, maybe you should help out the forger ants because they're super cute. Anyways, in this fight against the giant queen ant, I used missile launcher and then dog meat and a laser pistol, and we were able to take her out. Definitely make sure to loot her body because you can get the ant queen pheromones, which are worth a lot of money, and you might want them. And then inside of the chamber of the ant queen, there really isn't anything. I looked around and I could only find a lot of dead bodies and also an assault rifle. So hey, if you want to come all this way for an assault rifle, please be my guest. But I'll be honest, I was a bit disappointed we didn't get anything else. And there's the skeletons and like dead bodies and stuff. If you head on down to the southern portion of the main chamber, you're just going to find more giant soldier ants, so definitely take them out. And just keep on killing, and eventually you're going to find a really tiny chamber that has a dead Brahmin inside of it. There's literally nothing in this chamber besides a degraded Brahmin corpse. I was very depressed and very sad that this was my reward for helping the forger ants, but they're cute, so it's okay. Then if you go up this staircase on the eastern part of the main chamber, this will loop around back to the main entrance, so if you go left, this is the path you'll take. Going up, and about halfway up, you're going to find a skeleton along with a lot of frag grenades, so definitely make sure to pick up those frag grenades if you're interested. And there's also a stim pack, so hey, that's pretty darn good. But after killing all of the soldier ants, you can make your way out of this ant mound. There's going to be some more ants that just kind of spawn, I guess, by the entrance. I didn't see them the first time, but make sure to kill them, of course. I mean, I guess you can just have dog meat kill them for you as well, but I also want the X-Pizzles. Then, using the door of the ant mound, we can go across the field once again. No man's land. It's like World War I out there between these ants. And we can go in the peaceful ant mound that is, of course, surrounded by green fungus, right? Because they're peaceful. Anyways, I just wanted to point out that inside of this ant mound, there's dozens, perhaps hundreds of these just small, cute ants walking around. Although this place does sound kind of creepy because you can hear their legs and walking like crazy. But besides the creepy sound, they're pretty darn cute. If you look up on this little wall over here, we can actually jump up and we can find these little blocked off sections of their cave. Because the forger ants are much smaller than the soldier ants, portions of their cave are inaccessible to the player character. So that is quite unfortunate that we cannot explore further into their cave. Also, be on the lookout for these ant refuse piles, which are just like ant debris. Sometimes they might have somewhat good loot in them, like a Nuka-Cola or maybe some bottle caps. Definitely worth a look. Then the final chamber where we saw the war earlier, there are some things of interest. The first thing is we can get some ammunition over by this skeleton, along with a hunting rifle. Then if we come over to all of these eggs, the large egg ant pile, if you have 70 science and 40 medicine, you can inject them with a stim pack that will facilitate the growth of this ant colony, essentially ensuring its survival. And then on the opposite side of the chamber, we can find this giant ant compost pile. And basically this compost heap will just keep giving you ant nectar. So that's pretty darn good if you ask me. Just having a never-ending supply of ant nectar from our good friends, the forger ants. And then in the middle of this room, there is also a pond. Now, supposedly, when I was researching this place, there is allegedly a corpse or a dead ant researcher with a big book of science on him. I wasted a lot of time trying to find this dead body, and I couldn't for the life of me. And finally I was like, maybe I can dive down into the pond. And then all of these corpses came to the surface, and I was like, wow, that's pretty creepy. But I finally found the ant researcher and the big book of science that is on his body. So definitely pick that up. It is a good find. Just remember, if you can't find the body, it might be stuck at the bottom of that pond. So you just have to raise the dead from the grave. And there you have it, Shalebridge. I have to be honest, this is one of my favorite places in Fallout 3 so far. It was an epic location that I had no clue ever existed. Unfortunately, there is no marked or unmarked quest tied to this place. It's just up to you to be a good person to help out these ants. No one, besides the ants themselves, will ever know of your good deed helping these ants survive. They are peaceful ants, and they do give us, like, ant nectar for helping them out, which is pretty kind of them, I guess. But I kind of wish there was just a little bit more so that, you know, the ants were our friend throughout the rest of the game. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future location, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Howdy everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out SatCom Array in W-07C. Man, is that a mouthful or what? Despite this really long name and what might be seen as kind of a just copy and paste satellite array, there's actually a lot going on in this area, and it's a pretty cool place to come and check out. There's a couple of trucks that have some very interesting things inside, and of course the satellite array and the surrounding area just has a lot of interesting wildlife and interesting NPCs, so let's jump into it. And here's the location on the mini-map. It is just northwest of Shalebridge and northwest of the Abandoned Car Fort. Actually, if you go to Abandoned Car Fort, you just follow the highway north, and you'll come straight to the satellite array. Now, you have these two elevated highways right next to each other, and right in the middle is a Mirelurk habitat. Now, these Mirelurks are usually leveled to the player character, but there are chances you could even encounter a Mirelurk King as a low-level player, so it could be a bit risky, but if you actually shoot them from the highway, you can kill them somewhat easily. I just used a mini-nuke on the Mirelurk Hunters, and took out the smaller guys with my laser rifle. So first I want to look at the easternmost raised highway, because there is a truck up here, and as you approach it, a body will come flying out of the truck. There's a loud explosion, and basically this Enclave scientist just killed himself. You definitely want to go take a look at his body because he has a big book of science and some bottle caps. I'd like to assume that this scientist did some really messed up things in his career, and he can no longer live with the guilt. And obviously he's hiding out in this truck right next to an Enclave fortification. So who knows what he is guilty of, but perhaps justice is served. Also inside of the truck, you can find the mini nuke, and you can also find stim packs and other loot, but sometimes they get launched out of the truck because of the explosion. And there's also just a randomly teleporting dog meat inside as well. And as you approach the actual satellite array, a large fight will erupt with the Enclave soldiers as they spot you. One of these Enclave soldiers had a heavy incinerator, and that really tore me to pieces. I think flame weapons in Fallout 3 seem to be very overpowered, both for me and the enemy. I decided to go all the way around, which actually turned out to be a very good idea, because then the Enclave soldiers got attacked by these Mirelurk Hunters, and by the time I came back, everyone was just very low health, making it all a very easy kill, and then I could just loot them easily. However, not all of the Enclave soldiers came down from the satellite array. As you can see here, as I made my way up, there was more Enclave, and so you're gonna have to kill them as well. I think there was about 3 or 4 Enclave soldiers, along with the sentry bot, and also an Enclave officer that got lost, and you'll see him later. So definitely be prepared for a pretty large fight if you come to this location. Now, before going inside the actual satellite array, I wanted to take a look at the westernmost highway, where I was getting shot at by the Enclave officer, and you're going to find a bunch of skeletons along with internment orders. And if you actually read these orders, you can find a pretty dark piece of America's side of the Great War. We learned that the US government was interning Chinese Americans, obviously because the United States was at war with China. Obviously, this is very similar to what happened to Japanese Americans during World War II. It's a bit of a parallel between those two wars. Also worth mentioning is on the internment orders, there are 7 names. However, there's only 6 bodies within the truck, so perhaps one of them escaped when the atomic bombs fell. Then there's 2 first aid boxes, which contain pretty good loot. Then I was getting shot at by this Enclave officer, so I finally decided to kill him. And it's also worth noting that there's a copy of Pugilism Illustrated inside of this truck. And then, as I was making my way up back towards the satellite array, there was a Yao Guai that started to run at me, but then he started running away. There was a huge explosion from the truck that the Enclave officer shot earlier. A piece of the door almost hit me, and then the hood flew all the way up here to the satellite array. So really kind of crazy, awesome, funny explosion to catch on film. Now, inside of the satellite array, there is no danger to the player character. In fact, you are the danger. There will be several Enclave scientists, and they'll run away from you and Dogmeat as you enter. However, they are considered evil, they are considered enemies, so it's best to probably just kill them. Dogmeat did most of the bad work for me, so I just had to go around and loot. Now, there's really nothing inside of the satellite array. There was a medical kit, and of course you can get some medical supplies, and of course you can loot the Enclave for whatever they have. Now, as you come up at the top, if you've completed the Waters of Life quest, there will be 2 Enclave choppers that will fly by. However, I accidentally jumped off this side of the satellite array and killed myself, and when I respawned, there were no more helicopters, or sorry, vertibirds. However, when I came back down, the vertibirds were actually there. So it's kind of a weird glitch or weird sequencing. And as I watched the vertibirds to see where they go, they actually just kind of disappear into the mountain. Really weird. Some kind of Enclave conspiracy going on in that mountain, perhaps. Don't know what, or perhaps the mountain is just hungry and ate 2 giant metal birds for dinner. Then as we make our way to the other satellite array, we find that it is unfortunately boarded up and we cannot enter it. However, behind the satellite array, there is a very hungry Yaoguai that tried to kill me and Dogmeat. However, he was no match for my flamer. I went to go back to take a look at where the Yaoguai lives, but there isn't anything back here besides a few dead trees that just kind of mark his territory, perhaps. Now, the second satellite array is badly damaged, and the actual satellite dish has collapsed. I went to investigate the dish, and to my surprise and to my amusement, I actually found there is a friendly scavenger living inside, and he will actually trade with you whatever he has on him, and he can also repair your weapons, even though he only has a repair skill of 12. That's kind of worthless. But I just thought it was really funny that he's living so close to the Enclave. Obviously, in the satellite array, we can see several dead ghouls, and we can only imagine what the Enclave was doing to those innocent people. That scavenger is very lucky to be alive. However, sometimes that scavenger actually might be killed by the Enclave, depending on pathing and luck and RNG. Now, beneath the highway, there are these riverbeds. If you follow the riverbeds up, you will find these crash cars. This is to the northeast of the satellite array, and obviously you can see the fast forward, and you can also find a copy of Duck and Cover next to the skeleton. There's also 2 locked grenade boxes that contain frag grenades, and an ammunition crate that contained shotgun shells for me. And there you have it, SatCom array NW-07C. Again, a bit of a mouthful, and despite the kind of boring and lame name, this location is actually pretty darn cool. These 2 trucks that are at this location are really awesome, telling us some of the history of the Fallout universe, and telling us a very tragic story about a scientist that, well, probably did some very bad things. The satellite array itself is awesome because we have a pretty cool battle that takes place. There's Mirelurks, there's all kinds of cool stuff going on, a very dynamic fighting ground. And if you guys have any recommendations for a future location or future video, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here. Welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out 3 locations, that being Raider Wharf, MDPL 05 Power Station, or 05, and then Raven Rock. Now, of course, Raven Rock is probably one of the last locations we would actually visit on our normal playthrough, but I decided to go ahead and check it out and see what it's like early game, obviously before progressing far in the main quest. To my surprise, there's a pretty big glitch there. Anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and check out these 3 locations. And as you can see here on the mini-map, we are in the far northwestern corner of the map, which is where Raven Rock is located. Here you can see the location of MDPL 05 Power Station. But first we're going to check out Raider Wharf, and this is an unmarked location just to the southeast of the power station. Now this location is pretty cool, and we talked a little bit about this surrounding area in the previous episode. There are some crashed cars to the south of where we are now that contain a copy of Duck and Cover. But besides that, there are some rivers and what appears to be an old lake or reservoir in this area.
Now, as you approach, there's going to be several mirelurks. This appears to be some kind of mirelurk habitat. So definitely come prepared. I found that using a flamer on the mirelurks is actually quite effective, despite what you might think if you play like Pokemon or something, like because mirelurks are like a water type. Anyways, as we approach the river, I found this refrigerator with fungus growing inside, along with a skeleton on the shoreline. Now, Raider Wharf is just a dock on this old lake, and there are several raiders occupying it. Now, I almost died a few times because there was one raider who was very happy-go-lucky with this fucking missile launcher, but we were able to take him out thanks to the flamer. He actually just dropped the missile launcher because it was so freaking hot, and I could take in and repair my missile launcher along with some missiles. Now here you will find an ammunition crate and some chems like jet, and there are some stim packs and med-X and Radaway on this shelf. And then there's also a mini nuke on the shelf here on the left. Definitely a good find and definitely something you would want to pick up. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, this appears to be some kind of old lake or old reservoir. Maybe this used to be filled up with a lot more water, because at Raider Wharf we can find a lot of crashed boats and some crashed cars. I'm not sure how the crashed cars got there, maybe just the flow of the river over time. But there definitely appears to have been some kind of lake here or something. There's a lot of crashed boats, and I highly doubt this small pond just had a whole bunch of boats in it. But it also leaves into question, why is this dock here? And I would just assume it was built in the post-war era. Now, this blue boat is of significance because we can find a lot of useful items in it, such as a stealth buoy inside. Then on the roof, normally you will find a copy of Nikola Tesla and You. Now, if you can't find it, it was either A, phased into the roof, kind of fused into the roof, or B, it fell into the water because of an explosion from a stupid raider who was firing missiles at you. For me, it was option B, so just kind of look around until you can find it. Then if we head up the northwest, go up a cliff, we can find the MDPL 50 power station. Now, I've actually been trying to reach this rather unmarkable location for a while now because of Eric is Dead 2021 and Will Run for Fun, because we can find schematics for the dart gun here, along with a copy of Dean's Electronics and Workman's Toolbox. Fun fact, this is the only named toolbox within Fallout 3. Now, I really wanted the dart gun schematics because apparently this gun is super OP and super good. So now we have to construct it, and we will get onto that. There's also a chance for a random encounter here. I had 2 Wastelanders with an iBot. I killed the iBot because it's playing a radio, and we don't want any copyrighted music here. But this otherwise unremarkable location is unremarkable besides some pretty damn good loot. After this, I decided to go ahead and make my way to Raven Rock because I wanted to see what it looks like early game. And you don't have to believe what I'm going to say, but it's the truth. I was going to try and make a funny cinematic of me just shooting the door to this bunker. And upon shooting the door, it fucking flew off, and I was in disbelief. And I was like, well, I guess I can just enter fucking Raven Rock now. And yes, I can, but there is an invisible barrier that prevents you from going any further, which is rather unfortunate. But I was in total shock at what was happening right now, and I was trying to do anything in my power to get back past this invisible barrier. Now, I just wanted to create a funny cinematic with the flamethrower and like, let me in meme type of thing. And as I exited the bunker, I found these 3 freaking vertibirds flying away. Obviously a cinematic that's supposed to be viewed in the final phase of Fallout 3, but we can go ahead and view it now. And like I said, I was trying to get past this invisible barrier, but, nothing really seemed to work. And I decided to go ahead and research it. And yes, this is a known glitch, where if you shoot the bunker door, it will fly off. However, I couldn't find any way to get past this invisible barrier, which is quite unfortunate. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. I had a lot of fun checking out these areas. All of these places were pretty new to me. I have no memory of them besides, well, of course, the interior of Raven Rock. Now, if you have any recommendations for a future video or future idea, please post them in the comment section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here. Welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out High Water Trousers, or the actual location is called SatCom Array in W-05A. However, high water trousers sounds a lot more interesting. So this location might seem to be just another boring copy and paste, kind of just filler satellite array, but I can assure you it is much more than that, so let's jump on into it. And as you can see here on the world map, this location is just east of Raven Rock and the MDPL 05 power station, which we visited last time. Now, as you approach from the west, like I am, I found this small pond at the base of this mountain. Not really a point to the pond, but I just thought I'd mention it because locations like this fascinate me. Why is that pond there? I don't know. But anyways, as we continue our climb up towards the satellite array, a pretty epic fight broke out. There's an enclave base here on the western edge of this mountain, and also there appears to be some kind of Yaoguai cave or Yaoguai, den. And so a three-way fight broke out between the enclave, the Yaoguai, and then of course me and Dogmeat. Now at this point, I have finally acquired the dart gun, so everyone who's wanted me to get it, well, we now have it. And yes, it is very helpful because I can easily cripple the limbs of enemies, making them very slow or making them otherwise ineffective at fighting. So after me and Rex took out all of the enemies, I decided to check out the little enclave camp here. And there's some pretty dark things going here. Obviously, there's radiated pools of water. Now, we do have these enclave footlockers, which had some caps and ammunition in them, so not bad. Then if we come over here to the back, we can find a bunch of dead bodies, ghouls, wastelanders, skeletons, and of course, Brahmin. So obviously the enclave are trying to commit some kind of genocide here against those that they deem impure. Now, as we make our way up towards the satellite array, there's going to be a lot of frag mines around, as you see there, so do be careful. Now, when you enter, you're going to find that there's Talon Company mercs inside, along with a scientist. This poor scientist met her fate very quickly. Don't know how that was a sneak attack since the merc above her was shooting at me, but hey, it doesn't really matter. Anyways, I recommend just clearing out everyone that is in here. There aren't that many enemies. For me, there was just 2 Talon Company mercs, the scientist, and then a turret at the very top, which can shoot you from the very top, so definitely take it out. Because I was all the way at the bottom, it's all the way at the top, but it was still trying to kill me, that bastard. You can also hack it if you have average science skill. Now, there is a workbench on the second level that has a bottle cap mine, so definitely take that. And if we come down towards the first floor, right on your left of the entrance, we can find a Chinese Special Ops training manual, which is an awesome find. And then we can find a terminal which has log entries from that scientist, which we killed earlier. And this female ghoul scientist kind of made her home inside of this satellite array, SatCom array in W-05. She was in here for a while, but she had a lot of bottle caps, so she hired mercenaries from the Talon Company to protect the premises. She was doing a lot of research in here, and she actually was able to access some pre-war satellites, and one of those was high water trousers, an orbital nuclear weapons platform. And she was really excited about this, of course, if you want to read about her things in the terminal. But unfortunately for her, she did not have a targeting platform at her disposal, which meant that if she activated this payload, it would just drop right on top of the area surrounding the array. But she does keep the activation codes on her for an emergency, I guess, if she wants to kill herself. So we can definitely take those activation codes. In fact, we probably should for the safety of the wasteland. So after getting some of the good loot and killing everyone in the main part of the satellite, we can continue to make our way up. There is a ladder which leads us to the middle section. There was a merc out here with a missile launcher, and me and Dogmeat were able to kill him pretty easily. So that is all good and dandy. And if we go around to the other side of this middle section, we can find a door and then another ladder, which will take us to the top, where there is another Talon Company merc, this time with a flamer, who is waiting for us. But again, no match for me and Dogmeat. We make a pretty darn good team, if you ask me. And from up here, you can get some really amazing views of the surrounding area. And that pretty much sums up SatCom Array in W-05A. Pretty basic location, but the scientist is pretty cool. As I was making my way back towards the bottom, I found a first aid box, which is pretty good. There's also a terminal. Now, this terminal will give you the locations of the other 2 nearby SatCom arrays. And as I mentioned earlier, we cannot enter the positioning data. Now, obviously, you do not want to press that upload button. I mean, who in their right mind would press it?
Why are you the way that you are?
Of course, I could not resist activating high water trousers. Now, unfortunately, it's not a real nuclear missile. I mean, otherwise we'd be fucking dead. But they are a wave of mini nukes, but they're actually 10 times bigger than a normal mini nuke. Now, as I was leaving, I came across another freaking bizarre sight. So not only did we just launch nuclear missiles, but also a body, one of the Talon mercs, I assume, just started freaking the hell out. And I don't know what was happening, but I was just kind of like, what the hell? And then laughing at this incredible sight. Of course, the refrag mine's still going off because I forgot to deactivate a lot of them. But I just found this to be incredibly entertaining. And I think what was happening here is we did have a Talon merc who maybe did some good things in his life. So we had an angel and a demon battling it out to see if this guy will go to heaven or hell. And we can see, obviously, the demon won as he was sucked into the fucking earth. Man, what a sight. Anyways, Fallout never ceases to amuse and to amaze me. Also, I just wanted to mention, the reason I was recording outside in the first place was the satellite array. Apparently a Fallout shelter. Don't know how that is, since it's above ground and one well-placed nuke would, well, obliterate it. But, hey, it's a Fallout shelter. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. I had a ton of fun making this video. Of course, the mini nuke launch was freaking cool. And then the end, the true finale, was that Talon merc flipping the hell out. As always, guys, if you have any recommendations for a future location or future idea, please post them in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Broadcast Tower KB5, along with some of the surrounding area, including the Raider Wreckage Fortifications and the Overlook Raider Shack. Now, the latter of the two are unmarked locations, but Broadcast Tower KB5 is a marked location, as you can see here on the minimap. It's located in the far northwest corner of the map, east of SatCom Array, in W07C, west of Deathclaw Sanctuary, and just south of where we were last time. Now, as we approach from the north, we will find this billboard alongside the road, kind of this dual billboard setup, which is a bit interesting. So maybe this road had a lot of traffic on it back in the pre-war era. As we approach the broadcast tower, there's a chance for a random encounter. I had 2 rad scorpions attacking a wastelander, but there was really nothing on them, so this kind of a weird encounter, that poor wastelander. And if we activate the switch underneath the broadcast tower, we will receive signal Alpha Lima. And at this point in our journey across the Capital Wasteland, there's several towers just like this, and they all kind of say the same thing, calling all stations, any stations. This is the station's ID, and then invitation to transmit. However, if we head to the southeast of the tower, we can find a drainage pipe, which is where the signal is coming from. If we open up this door, the next door will have a skeleton in front of it, along with a 10mm pistol, a lockpick or a bobby pin, and then tumblers today. And this person, we can assume, was trying to break into this room, which may have been an old survivor shelter from a long time ago when the bombs fell. There appears to be some kind of woman in here, this skeleton, and if we activate the radio, we can turn off the signal. So perhaps this man was trying to break into this room, and the woman was just trying to stay safe after the bombs fell, but they both died, we can assume maybe to radiation. Then if we head to the southwest of the broadcast tower, we can find several raiders. These are the raider fortifications that are up along this mountain towards the broadcast tower. Now, if you attack from above like I am, this is actually a pretty easy fight because you have the high ground. So using the scoped 44, I was able to take care of business relatively easily. However, if you were to come from beneath, I think this would be actually quite a difficult fight. You have a guy with missile launchers. A lot of these guys are pretty well armed. So, be careful if you come from below, which you might, because at the bottom of here is a highway, and there is a truck that contains a very interesting encounter with a scientist that will kill himself. So if you're interested in the exploding scientist truck or SatCom array in W-07C, I'll link that video in the description below. And after we've cleared out all of the raiders along these fortifications, we can head on over to here and we can start looting. Now, there really isn't a whole lot of loot within these fortifications. There's just some ammunition boxes, some grenade boxes, so definitely make sure to look around and grab what you can find. Now, on the fortification that's the highest up on the mountain, we can actually find a somewhat decent find. Now, there is a first aid kit and a super sledge, so, you might be interested in that. Bobby pins, some stim packs, all of that is good. Now, if we look to our left, hidden inside of a box, underneath the table there with the tin cans inside of it, we can find a copy of Grognak the Barbarian. It's pretty well hidden inside of there, and if you didn't know to look, you might easily missed it, but it is there if you need it. Now, if we head on over to the northwest, we will find an abandoned house. This is the Raider Overlook. Now, here, this provides a very good overlook of the surrounding area, and I'm kind of surprised the Enclave would not have taken a position here. Perhaps the Raiders are just too much for them. I don't really know. But anyways, kill all of the Raiders. They were only armed with melee weapons besides like one of them, plus their dogs, so a pretty easy fight. Head on down and we have some interesting graffiti on the side of the house. And as we enter, we can find some pretty good loot. Inside of the bathtub, there is a mini nuke. That skeleton was pissed off that we took that mini nuke, but hey, he's dead, I guess. There's 3 ammunition crates besides the fireplace, so definitely make sure to take a look and get what ammunition you can. In the back, there is another crate. I just looked to see if there's anything. There is not. And there's a copy of Tumblers Today on this shelf, so really good find. Then, if we head even further to the northeast, we will find these crashed cars alongside this rock. If you look below you, there will be this kind of dry pond or dry lake, and then there is a dead wastelander by this car. And if we loot him, we find a note called Almost Home. And reading this note has a pretty tragic kind of story, and it reads, "It seems like I've been out here scavenging forever. I'm ready to head home soon, though. I've got just enough to keep Paulina, Cress, and me going for another week." So obviously, whoever this wastelander was, he was on his way back home relatively recently, considering the state of his body, but he never made it home. It's unclear who Paulina or Cress is, but perhaps they're out there waiting for the return of their husband or their brother or their friend, who knows. If we continue even further northeast from the dead wastelander, we will find this random bathtub in the middle of nowhere. And inside this bathtub is a mini nuke, so definitely grab that. The skeleton was also pissed off that I took his mini nuke. Man, these damn skeletons. And I think that pretty much sums up Broadcast Tower KB5. This is a really cool location to explore. There's a lot going on in the surrounding area. And honestly, the northwestern part of the map has just been a ton of fun to explore. It's a bit different than the rest of the Capital Wasteland, and I really enjoy kind of the exploration and the survival element that is present here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys have a recommendation for a future location or future video, please post them in the comments section below. And, as always, until next time.
What's hot? Hot Wheels convertibles.
Okay.
Now you can...
Howdy everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're greeted with a very beautiful sunrise coming up over the Capital Wasteland. Now today we're going to be checking out Deathclaw Sanctuary. Now many people consider this to be one of the most difficult areas in Fallout 3. However, I was using the dart gun, and if you use the dart gun, you will find this place is actually pretty darn easy. Also, having dog meat helped a lot, so let's go ahead and check out Deathclaw Sanctuary. Not to be confused with Deathclaw Promontory in Fallout New Vegas, Deathclaw Sanctuary is located in the far northwest of the Capital Wasteland, literally right next to Broadcast Tower KB5, which we explored last video. In fact, we are approaching from Broadcast Tower KB5, and you get a really good vantage point on the entrance to Deathclaw Promontory from this angle. There's this little hole right above the entrance, which makes the Deathclaws run away because they sense danger, they cannot reach us. Used a well-placed mini-nuke on that poor Deathclaw because, well, why not? However, mini-nukes are the least of the Deathclaw's worries because the dart gun is far more dangerous, far more scary. You see, the dart gun is the most powerful gun in Fallout 3. One hit will cripple the limbs of anyone who faces us. This gun, which is simply made up of a paint gun, a toy car, and some surgical tubing, is literally death in a gun. And anybody that gets shot by it, especially a large Deathclaw without any kind of ranged weapon, is pretty much ineffective against us. If we go just to the east of the entrance to Deathclaw Sanctuary, we'll find an Enclave camp with some decent loot, as you saw, and it appears that the Enclave are experimenting on the Deathclaws. As we know, they're trying to make like Deathclaw soldiers. Crazy bastards. Now, I also want to take a look at some of the surrounding area around Deathclaw Sanctuary. We kind of have these tall plateaus in the canyon that would lead to Deathclaw Sanctuary if you approach from the south. Now, on top of these plateaus, there are these wooden bridges, but there's nothing really on these plateaus of note besides an absolutely brilliant view of the Capital Wasteland and the surrounding area. However, just to the south of Deathclaw Sanctuary, we have a road that abruptly ends inside of this tunnel. I don't know what this tunnel is or why it's here or why this tunnel would be here in real life. It really seems quite pointless, but my guess is maybe it goes underneath the river, maybe something we can investigate later on. And as you just saw, there will be some robots down here by the tunnel, so make sure you kill them. I went to go see if there was any entrance to the tunnel, and there is nothing that is accessible to the player character. And then I went and looted the robots that I killed. Now, there's a chance for a random encounter just here in the canyon, right below Deathclaw Sanctuary. I found this magical scavenger who was selling all kinds of random stuff, and behind him is a floating barrel with fire in it. So this scavenger is obviously a wizard, which is obviously why he can survive living so close to these Deathclaws. Now, as you approach the entrance, we will find an average locked footlocker with duck and cover inside and various ammunition and explosives, so a pretty good find. And then we can enter Deathclaw Sanctuary. Now, this is kind of comparable to Dead Wind Cavern in Fallout New Vegas. However, I have to say I think Dead Wind is significantly more difficult because there's no dart gun in Fallout New Vegas. So in here, just using the dart gun and letting dog meat go at it against these Deathclaws proved to be extremely effective. Something I didn't realize in Fallout 3 is dog meat regenerates his health once we finish a battle, which kind of means dog meat is kind of invincible. I mean, if he got in a really bad situation, he might die. Now, at the entrance, we will find several mutilated bodies, and next to this dead Brahmin, we can find a mini-nuke, a bobblehead, Endurance, and then Nikola Tesla and you. I just never really knew that bobbleheads' heads actually bobble. Who would have thought? I probably noticed it before, just I didn't remember, so I just thought I'd go ahead and point it out, because why not? Now, inside of the Deathclaw Sanctuary, we're going to find tons of mutilated bodies in this similar way, so there's lots of blood, lots of gore. As I kept going throughout the sanctuary, I eventually found a part where there was a Deathclaw that obviously saw me, but he couldn't reach me for whatever reason. In here, there was tons of mutilated bodies, and something you want to look for in these piles of bodies are these wasteland merchants, because they're going to have a good amount of caps on them, along with some other interesting loot, like stim packs or junk that, you might be interested in for crafting or something. And then as I was searching for this Deathclaw, the Deathclaw decided to jump scare me, literally jumping out of this wall. And ladies and gentlemen, we have it. We have another sighting of Deathclaw Jesus. It has been a long time since we encountered him, probably since Old Oni, but here he is, Deathclaw Jesus, phasing into a wall because he was so freaking afraid of the dart gun. I couldn't find where he went, but he actually teleported above us, and then I used the plasma pistol and, of course, Dogmeat, who is better than Deathclaw Jesus, and then me and Dogmeat just, killed the Deathclaw. Unfortunately, he had to die, just like all of the other Deathclaw Jesuses, but he kept being resurrected, so guess it doesn't matter. And as we continue our way through Deathclaw Sanctuary, like I said, there are so many piles of mutilated bodies. Obviously, this place has been haunting and terrorizing the citizens of the Capital Wasteland. There are so many dead bodies in here, it's actually pretty wild. Deadwind Cavern does not have nearly this many dead people inside of it. Here, this is the only Deathclaw that got a hit on me while I was playing in this area, and it was only because he jumped while I was in VATS, and he got his jump off before I could cripple his leg, but I crippled his legs mid-jump. Now, in this next main chamber, this is probably the largest chamber, is where the fight became the most difficult, because there were 3 Deathclaws in this area. However, for some reason, one of the Deathclaws didn't fight me immediately, and the 2 Deathclaws that did want to fight were more fixated on Dogmeat, so Dogmeat is an absolute champ, and we were able to kill both of these Deathclaws. Here's the other Deathclaw not far behind. Now, in this main chamber, if we kind of go to the west-northwest, we will find a large pile of bodies along with an ant. Now, in this pile, we can find a special weapon called Jack. Now, there is a Wasteland Merchant, and so definitely take a look at him, see what kind of loot he has on him. And then tucked away in the back here, there's 2 bodies, actually. There's a Wastelander, and there's an Enclave Officer. You want to loot the Enclave Officer if you've completed the Waters of Life quest in order to receive Jack, a unique melee weapon. So pretty darn good. Then if we head to the very back of this room, which is to the southeast, we will find this bloody pool of water. It is radioactive. There's several dead bodies inside of it. Go ahead and take a look at the bodies for some ammunition or weapons. And then lying on the shores of this small pond is Vengeance. Again, another unique weapon, but this time you don't have to complete the Waters of Life quest in order to find it. That always spawns there, so pretty easy. Now, from here on out, you can keep on exploring the cave, but truthfully, there's no point except for the XP from killing the Deathclaws. At this point, you've pretty much found all of the important loot, and it's just killing Deathclaws and trying to find your freaking way out of this maze. And it is not too difficult if you use the local map. Actually, using the local map helped me out a lot, helped me understand this place a lot better. And there you guys have it. Deathclaw Sanctuary. It was actually not that bad. Who would have thought? But upon leaving Deathclaw Sanctuary, I did feel an overwhelming sense of happiness to be out of literally hell. But I don't think it's as bad as Deadwind Cavern. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you guys have any recommendations or video ideas for a future location, future video, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Mount Mabel Campground, which is a location in the far northwestern part of the map. It is kind of near Deathclaw Sanctuary, where we visited last time. Now this location is kind of small, but there are a ton of Yaoguai here. And, fun fact, this location is actually referenced in Fallout Shelter Online. Now, if you didn't know, Fallout Shelter Online is the Chinese version of Fallout Shelter, and it's available throughout Asia, China, Japan, Korea, Philippines, stuff like that. And it's just kind of the sequel, or the Chinese version of Fallout Shelter. Anyways, in Fallout Shelter Online, there is the Mount Mabel monster, which is a playable Deathclaw hero in the game that can join your vault. Quite interesting, if you ask me, and pretty freaking cool. However, there really aren't any Deathclaws in this area, but there is Deathclaw Sanctuary nearby, which is probably why we have this monster. Enough of Chinese Fallout, which is kind of weird when you actually think about it. Anyways, when we approach, like I said, there are a lot of Yaoguai. I found out the dart gun is not nearly as effective against Yaoguai as it is against Deathclaws. Even if you cripple their legs or arms, Yaoguai can still move pretty quickly. So it's not like a bad strategy, because it does make them a bit ineffective compared to their normal state, but it's just not as effective. but still a pretty good gun. Also, there was a giant rad scorpion here, which I assume was killed by the Yaoguai, since the Yaoguai was injured when I first attacked him. And then here is the campground. It's just kind of like any other campground you would find in Fallout 3 or Fallout New Vegas. You have these very kind of copy and paste trailers. Inside of this trailer, we have a few ammunition crates or boxes, and then a first aid box, and of course the mattress or the bed that you see in front of me. Outside, there are several picnic tables with all kinds of pre-war junk on them, and I was rudely interrupted from looting by this darn Yaoguai. Again, there's going to be a lot of them in this area. We have this one trailer which is kind of fallen apart or is falling into the earth, I don't know, but there's a first aid box in there, so definitely take a look at that. And then there's just tons of picnic tables. There's really nothing to note here though, no like really good loot or anything besides just random stuff. There's a skeleton and some whiskey. Perhaps he was trying to enjoy his life when the world ended. If we head over here to this swing set, there's a teddy bear and 2 toy cars, so obviously some children probably died when the Great War started. If we head down by the road, we can find 2 campers, along with a really tall flagpole, but there's nothing in these campers, and the flagpole is obviously just aesthetic. We can't really do anything with it. Would be cool if there was like an enclave flag or something on it, I don't know, just thoughts. But obviously there's not going to be a real flag, it would be deteriorated by this point in time. If we head down towards the south, we can find a scenic overlook, which just overlooks the river and the highway, and yeah, it is a pretty good view of the surrounding area. We can see a destroyed car here on the cliff that was probably enjoying the view before the bombs went off. Now heading a bit to the east, and we find a trailer that is just abandoned and there's nothing inside. Now, in my previous video, I mentioned that there was a tunnel just south of Deathclaw Sanctuary, and that I would explore it more in a later video. Well, here it is. Here's the entrance of the tunnel, just south of Deathclaw Sanctuary and south of the campground. And if you follow the tunnel, or what we assume is the tunnel, we can actually find the exit over here. And another Yaoguai, because why not? And we can find that it's literally just a tunnel for cars. We cannot go inside, which is unfortunate. So I don't know if it's actually practical to build a tunnel in that situation or what, but you know, maybe for the devs, it was a lot easier to design. And alright everyone, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. This kind of unremarkable location was actually pretty fun to explore, just because there's so many Yaoguai in the area, and I actually quite enjoy fighting them. So, hey, I had a lot of fun exploring it, even if there really isn't much here. And Mount Mabel Campground is now done. Alright guys, if you have any recommendations for a future video or future location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Dickerson Tabernacle. Now, what the heck is a tabernacle? Honestly, I didn't know, but it's actually just kind of a movable dwelling from the Bible of like construction, or it's a meeting place for worship by Latter-day Saints or Mormons. Also, tabernacle is a swear word in French. In French Canada, it actually is the equivalent of the English F-bomb, fuck. So instead of saying fuck, you can say tabernacle, because why not? Anyways, we're taking a look at Dickerson Tabernacle, and this location is actually really interesting. There's some interesting things going on here because of its resident. Its resident is simply known as the Drifter, who is a hostile wastelander who is found inside. Now, the Drifter was once a member of the Tree Menders in Oasis, but for whatever reason, he was exiled. We actually don't know why he was exiled, but he made his home in this church, and he just sits at the top and shoots anyone that comes near him. Now, his high position is inaccessible to the numerous Yaoguai nearby, which makes it quite effective. Now, it's also worth mentioning that this character appears in Fallout Shelter Online, the Chinese version of Fallout Shelter, which is available throughout Asia. And in Fallout Shelter Online, we learn that at some point in the 2280s, the Drifter hunted an experimental Deathclaw, which had escaped from Raven Rock, and he confronted the creature at Mount Mabel, but ultimately left without slaying it. This is possibly what the Mount Mabel monster, which is a friendly Deathclaw in Fallout Shelter Online, is from.
Now, there is no true confirmation of this, but obviously with all of these events, this is what one is led to believe. And if you want to know more about the Mount Mabel monster, please check out my Mount Mabel campground video. And then here on the map, you can see the location of Dickerson Tabernacle Chapel, which is just northeast of the Mount Mabel campground where we were last time, and east of Deathclaw Sanctuary. Now, from far away, we can actually see the Drifter patrolling back and forth from atop his little position. And we can snipe him from far away, miss your first shot, and then hit the second shot like I did, and send one of his body parts flying for some reason. But he's pretty easy to kill, actually, if you're using a sniper and you sneak attack him like I did. As we approach the church, we'll find two skeletons beneath this tree. We can probably assume that the Drifter killed these two people, and then inside his body fell down, and you definitely want to loot his body because he has coordinates for Oasis, so it shows up on your minimap. And we also have the Reservist Rifle, which is a unique sniper within the game. Now, also within the church, we can find a lot of ammunition boxes. Now, behind this one, we can find a skeleton with a combat shotgun. I just found this interesting because it appears that this skeleton was trying to defend itself using the church bench as cover, and then he had a shotgun. Perhaps he was another victim of the Drifter. And then also within the church, we can find this pedestal over here, and there's bottle caps on the top and a bottle of vodka underneath. And then we can find more ammunition crates, one of which we have to lockpick in order to get inside. And also in between these ammunition boxes, there is a copy of Guns and Bullets, so definitely make sure to pick that up. Now, you also notice that there's several beds inside of the church for whatever reason, even though there's only one person living here. Then towards the back of the church, you'll find this box with some detergent in it. Pick up the box and empty it out to find two stim packs hidden underneath the detergent. Now, when I was researching this place online, I was reading that you need to make sure the Drifter's body falls from above, otherwise you can't loot him. However, when I was looking at the wiki page, I noticed that it says you can reach the top, so I became determined to figure out how to do that, because the wiki provided no information on how to do it. My first instinct was to use this pedestal and then jump up on the window. However, you just don't have enough height from the window in order to reach the top, but it almost works. And my next instinct was to use the destroyed wall on the south side of the church in order to get up. And this is the way. But it's going to take a lot of jumping and a lot of trial and error in order to do it. But it is definitely possible. Just make sure you save a lot as you make your way up. But basically, go to the highest part of this destroyed wall. Save. Then, from this point, you can actually jump on top of this beam, like you can see me doing here. And once you're up here, make sure to save, and then you can jump across to the other beam, and then you can easily jump over to the small platform that the Drifter uses. And now we're at the top, so even if you were very unfortunate and the body was stuck up here, you could still theoretically make your way up here and loot the Drifter. Ha! He's not so safe from us after all. And the window has no hit detection, so we just phase right through it like a ghost. And then also I wanted to point out to the north of the church, there is a small shack on top of the hill near this T intersection. Now this shack is unmarked and I couldn't find anything online about it. It's just a pretty small shack. However, I thought I'd note there's this really tiny, cute metal box on the table. But besides that, there's no significant loot in this shack besides some empty Nuka-Cola bottles. Also, you can get a pretty nice view of the surrounding area. Also, while I was just kind of looking around this area, I had a really weird glitch. It seemed like a body got flung across the entire freaking map. That was absolutely insane. I have no clue what happened there. All I know is whatever that AI was definitely was yelling Tabernacle as it got launched across the entire map. Now, it's also worth mentioning there is an unmarked quest associated with this place called High Plains Drifter, which is a reference to the 1973 Western film of the same name. Now, High Plains Drifter is simply just killing the Drifter and taking the loot on his body. Pretty darn easy unmarked quest, if I do say so myself. And everyone, there you have it. Dickerson Tabernacle Chapel. This location is really freaking cool. When I initially found this place, I thought it was just going to be another kind of boring, just kind of church that's kind of copy and paste in the Capital Wasteland. However, there's a lot going on here. There's some really cool lore, and obviously Bethesda has expanded the lore a bit in a Chinese version of Fallout Shelter, but still, it's pretty cool. And also, just kind of exploring around, trying to get to the top of the church, was a lot of fun. So, what do you guys think? Why was the Drifter exiled from Oasis? Who knows, but I want to hear your theories. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you have any recommendations for a future video or future location, please post them in the comment section below. And, as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out 5 Axels rest stop, and this just appears to be some kind of old rest stop for trucks. As you can see here, we have 4 trucks that kind of make this bad square, and in the middle there are trees and stuff like that. Don't know if this was really a rest stop in the past, or if it just picked up that name, but here's the location on the minimap just north of Rockbreaker's Last Gas. And it's in the far northwestern corner of the map. Now, as I was approaching, I was coming from the north, so I was going south, and I found a magical doctor just kind of swimming in the air. Don't know what he was doing or how he was doing it, but eventually he did start walking again. Once he noticed I was there, he stopped using his magic. Now, I don't know how common these wasteland doctors are, if it's just a random encounter, but he had a ton of stim packs. So I decided to go ahead and buy all of them, because I've actually been lacking stim packs in this playthrough so far, so that was pretty convenient to find him. Also in this area, we just have this crashed car and train area where the train tracks obviously collapsed. Kind of some havoc that happened probably during the early stages of the Great War when Washington was hit by nukes. Then as we approach 5 Axels rest stop, you will want to be careful because this is a raider camp. Now, I was crouching to see if I could find the raiders, and I'm glad I was, because for whatever reason, they were sleeping, even though it was the afternoon. You can see them all in the truck, and after a couple of missed shots and some shots that hit, I was finally able to take them all out relatively easily. Now, inside of this truck, we do have some pretty good loot, so obviously loot the raiders. They also have some drugs and stuff, so maybe that's why they were passed out. We have a U.S. Army 30 flamethrower recipe book for increasing big gun, and also a mini nuke, so pretty good loot inside the back of this truck. Outside, we just kind of have these trees, and on the trees are some dead bodies that were tortured, or God knows what was happening here, but yeah, that's something that's outside. And also in the back of this truck, we just have some dead and mutilated bodies, obviously from the raiders. There are various landmines around the area, so do be careful as you explore. In the back of this truck, with all of the tires, we can find something kind of interesting. In the back, there is a skeleton with a 10mm next to him, and then also there is a radio, and then a partial CB radio backup. And this backup has some very interesting audio, so let's take a listen.
Come again, come again. Any truckers on this wave?
So that said, come again, any truckers on this wave, and it just appears that this was a trucker during the Great War. Now, there are other unused parts to this that were cut from the final game. Don't know if they're going to be in other locations, but I'll go ahead and read them since you cannot find them. Then there would be the second guy, which replies, I read you, buddy. You all see those clouds? Over. First guy says, 10-4, it's the commies. Let's circle the wagons. Meet us at the state line on Route 7. Second guy, you got a deal. I'll pass the word along my way. Over and out. So obviously with these recordings, we have a better idea about why this truck stop was kind of created. For whatever reason, these drivers made a circle and kind of made this their fortification during the events of the Great War. Kind of interesting. Don't know why most of the tapes were cut, but there they are. Now, besides that, there isn't a whole lot in this area. You can jump on top of the trucks using the trees or just kind of hopping your own way up, and you can get a good view of the surrounding area. While I was up here, I actually spotted some super mutants off in the distance, so there is a path for super mutants nearby here, so do be careful. There was a super mutant brute and super mutant master for me. Using my sniper rifle, though, I was able to make pretty quick work of them. Even though the master started fighting me, I was able to kill him. So just be aware that they do exist. And there you guys have it. 5 Axels Rest Stop. A very interesting kind of area that has a neat little backstory, but for whatever reason it was cut from the final game. Don't know why Bethesda did that, but hey, either way, it leaves us to wonder why this location exists. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you have any recommendations for a future video or future location, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time. Hello everyone, the Army of Otters here, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out the MDPL Mass Relay Station, which you can see here, and this is now controlled by raiders. If it wasn't obvious, there are bodies strung all across the old power lines of this place, obviously what used to be an old relay station. There's also a lot of interesting things in the surrounding area, so let's waste no more time and jump on into it. And then here's the location on the world map, just east of 5 Axels Rest Stop, the previous location, kind of in the northwestern part of the map. And as you approach, as I said, this area is now controlled by raiders. The reason I say now is it used to be controlled by the Brotherhood of Steel. Don't know if they abandoned it or if they actually lost a battle to the raiders, but it appears it was probably abandoned. Anyways, take out the raiders when there are going to be a few of them outside of the relay station itself. So kill them, loot their bodies, do what you gotta do. There were fingers for me, so I'm collecting those to sell later. Then shoot a weapon out of his hands, because you're a freaking badass like me. Over here we have a mutilated body of some kind, and just some random junk. There are some ammunition crates and some stealth boys that I found. I found a lot of stealth boys at this location, which is always pretty good. And there's another ammunition box underneath this small table. And there's also a first aid box over on this table. But besides that, not a whole lot. Here's the river we can see, and we'll talk more about that later. And there is a door and a lot of graffiti. But upon entering, we will be greeted with a Brotherhood of Steel flag on our left, along with a torture. And if you kill the torture, you can actually take his helmet, even though I kind of incinerated him with my laser rifle. His helmet is kind of unique. So you definitely want to take it. The Torture's mask, just some unique armor, increasing our big guns and explosives, so not bad, not bad. Over here on the table, we have a copy of Guns and Bullets, along with some 10mm rounds, so that's pretty darn good. Over here on the shelf, we have some ammunition boxes and a fuck ton of coffee mugs, for whatever reason. There is a very hard locked safe. You can use lockpick or science to open it. I don't have 100 in either, so I cannot open it. Inside is a Nuka-Cola Quantum. Also another stealth boy in that footlocker. And as I mentioned, this used to be Brotherhood of Steel. We can see the Brotherhood of Steel flag there, which has been painted over by the raiders. And also worth noting, the 3 beds inside are in such high quality. Some of the nicest beds you'll find in the Capital Wasteland. Then if we head just to the east of the relay station, we'll find this crashed boat. We found a Mirelurk Hunter. I'm sure it's leveled, depending on your level. There's some ammunition boxes on the crashed boat, along with some random junk inside of these metal boxes, but besides that, not a whole lot. Now, if we head to the south of the relay station, we can find a small dock, an outhouse, and 3 Yaoguai. Now, there are supposed to be a bunch of human bodies in this area. However, I could not find the bodies. I searched for about 4 minutes looking around, and I think what happened is the bodies despawned when I visited Shacktown in my Shacktown video, because this location is very close to Shacktown. So perhaps the bodies were there, but they despawned after so many days. Now, I did find skeletons, and the skeletons are supposed to be there with the bodies, but at the time I didn't really realize this. I read more about it, and yes, the skeletons are supposed to be there with some bodies. That's just me running around the area trying to find the dead bodies, and we can assume these people were killed by the Yaoguai. Also worth mentioning is there's a very large parking lot for the relay station. Don't know why it needs such a large parking lot, but yes, it is here for whatever reason. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. If you guys have any recommendations for future video or future locations, please post them in the comments section below. And as always, until next time.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. Today we're going to be checking out Pylon Shack, which is a location in the far northwest part of the map, an unmarked location. Also nearby is this unmarked farmstead. Don't know what it is actually called. I tried researching it on the internet, couldn't find a name, so I'm just going to call it the radioactive farmstead because there are large pools of radioactive water right next to it. So let's jump into these unmarked locations. And here's the location, just southeast of 5 Axels rest stop and Rockbreaker's last gas, south of the MDPL mass relay station. And as we approach, as I said, there's going to be radioactive pools of water. We have this kind of metal shack and this car that appears to have been thrown against the building, perhaps as a result of a nuclear explosion, or it was put there on purpose, who knows. Now, there are a lot of robots in the area, some robo-brains, along with some protectrons, so be ready to fight them off. There's also some boat flies and possible Yaoguai in the area, so do be careful. Over here in this little pin area, or what would have been an animal pin, we have what appears to be some Brahmin or cow skeletons. So obviously this used to be an active farm, but appears to have been overrun by the creatures of the Capital Wasteland. And we can look back and see the farmstead. Then as we move up the hill, we can find the Pylon Shack. And this features 2 aggressive ghoulified wastelanders. Sometimes they might be fighting a rad scorpion or something and they might be killed by it, but usually you'll find both of them. There are enemies in the surrounding area, robo-brains and a boat fly, so do be aware. Now inside of the Pylon Shack, we actually have some pretty interesting loot. We have a Keller family transcript, the first one actually, 1 of 5 of 1 of 5 transcripts. We have some darts, a personal footlocker that is a very hard lock with random loot, and then some ammunition boxes, a pre-war book, and also in the corner we have a mini nuke, so that's a great find. So many mini nukes in Fallout 3, unlike Fallout New Vegas, so, interesting, but anyways, that is that. That is Pylon Shack and an unnamed, possibly radioactive farmstead. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this very quick, very fast episode of the Unexplored Capital Wasteland. I really love this location. I love unmarked locations just because they feel so untouched, they feel so natural, and most players just pass by without ever thinking about them. If you guys have any recommendations or ideas for a future video, please post them in the comment section below, and as always, until next time.